It has been a long time, guys. It has been quite a long time since I've heard that music. Oh my god, it's like almost was like a homecoming in a way. And I'm sure most of y'all know this one was coming after I made the whole special thing a part of the whole Manga Wars trend with Naruto vs. Naruto Gaiden. And lo and behold, now we're here. Hey guys, what's going on? Lucky Cheese 7 is here today to give you guys, yes, a Manga Wars special on Rave Master versus Fairy Tail. A topic that likes to go around the anime manga community, especially for Hiro Mashima, for a while. A very, very while. You could even argue it's been an ongoing thing since Fairy Tail was ongoing as a series. But as you all know, doing a podcast of this sort would be a little dull just coming from me. So I brought with me one of my friends, one of my special guests, the man that curses himself of all curses, Blue Star.
I'm never going to hear the end of that one, am I? I am never going to hear the end of that.
Well, if you guys want to know what happened back in April, yeah, you can look at him.
Oh boy, I'm going to get blamed for everything, aren't I? Hello everyone, Blue Star here once again for another Manga Wars podcast, because I'm sure if you have watched all the other Manga Wars, you know I do not miss these for Lucky Chi.
And
since 4Life is kind of busy right now.
Yeah, I mean, he did, and let me say this right now. 4Life, Sparta 3D did want to join us, but stuff came up.
Mm-hmm. Now, hopefully he'll show up for the next one, because I know, because let's see, we both know what that is, but we'll get that towards the end of this podcast. But anyway, go on.
Yes. So, if y'all guys remember the manga word structure, right? It's fairly simple. You know, we go over the summary of both series, compare and contrast, main characters, main female characters, supporting characters, side characters, antagonists, main antagonists, best arc, worst arc, endings, and then some general thoughts about the author. But since it's a special, for those of you that need a reminder, it's more of a comparison between the two works of the same author and seeing whether or not they've improved as a writer, improved as an artist, you know, that kind of stuff. Given that we're actually tackling two of Hiro Mashima's biggest works, although you could argue Fairy Tail was more localized, popularized, one of the two with terms.
It's his more famous work.
More famous, yeah.
It's the work that made him sort of big, I guess you could say, or infamous, depending on who you ask.
That's one way to say. But that's the general sense of how the Manga Wars special goes. And of course, you've got the secret question, or in this case, secret questions, because I figured I'd throw in 2 extra questions, but y'all will find out what those are at the very end.
Uh-huh.
So let's go ahead and jump into the summaries of... Not summary. I said summaries. Wow. Just a quick little background of both these series. So I'll tackle Rave Master, and Blue will tackle Fairy Tail. The summary of Rave Master is that 50 years ago, there were wielders of the sacred Rave Stones, and they fought against an onslaught caused by demon stones called Dark Rings. This war resulted in an explosion known as Overdrive, a blast so powerful that it sent the Dark Rings into a deep slumber and scattered the pieces of Rave across the world. And in the present timeline, Haru Glory lives a peaceful life on Garage Island until one day he comes across a creature named Blue, and comes across an old man named Shiba, who was the original Rave Master, and through that, let's just say some unforeseen circumstances happen. Haru becomes the new Rave Master, and along the way, he meets this mysterious girl named Ellie, who is on a quest to recover memories from her past. And that's the lightest way of putting the summary of Rave Master. So now I'm going to hand it over to Blue to talk about Fairy Tail.
Well, for those who know about Fairy Tale, it's set place in the land of Fury, a world of magic and wizards. Or mages, if you will, but yeah. Let's see. The story follows, the Dragon Slayer Natsu Dragneel with his partner and pet, Happy the Flying Cat, as he is joined by newcomer to the Fairy Tale Guild, Lucy Ophelia. A celestial spirit mage who can summon spirits to fight her in her battles. She seeks to join the guild that Natsu is a part of, Fairy Tale, regarded as the best guild in the land. And during the adventures, they are joined by Natsu's rival in the guild, Gray the Frost Mage, and Elza the S-class elite mage of the guild, the strongest female, if you will, as Natsu Dragneel is in search for his long-lost, adoptive father, the dragon Igneel, who taught him the Fire Dragon Slayer's magic, who disappeared in the year 77. During along the adventures, they are also joined by, Wendy, the Sky Dragon Slayer, Gagel, the Iron Dragon Slayer, Juvier, the Water Mage with your infatuation with Gray, and a few more friends and all that stuff amongst the guild, such as like Elfman, Mira Jane, Levy, Luxus, and all that stuff. As Natsu and friends go on many journeys, they are also surrounded by the mystery of the dark wizard Zerf Dragneel, whose many dark items and weapons and demons he has created has affected but the characters in the current setting, as well as even some of their past, such as Grey, as the demon Dramo, destroyed his home and has killed his master, as well as the Dark Tower, which Elsa was imprisoned, in which he uses to revive people. During this, we learn that Natsu Dragneel and Zerf, the Dark Mage, have a history with each other, though that history remains unknown. And during this time, they also have to deal with the Black Dragon Agnologia, who plans to destroy the world. Can Natsu and his friends defeat Zerf and defeat the Dragon Agnologia? You have to read the series to find out. So there we go.
So, having said that, let's go ahead and dive right into compare and contrast. More so with the main protagonist of both these series. In this case, Heart of Glory from Rave Master and Natsu Dragneel from Fairy Tale. So, I'll go ahead and let Blue share his thoughts on both these two characters and whatnot.
Okay. I guess I'll start with the one I'm most familiar with, Natsu Dragneel. The Fire Dragon Slayer. In many ways, Natsu Dragneel is pretty much the definition of a stereotypical shonen protagonist.
Pretty much.
I mean, he is probably literally the standard thing. I mean, granted, you could also say the same with Goku, Naruto, and all that stuff, but they all have something unique about them, I guess you could say. Or there's something that stands out with them and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But Natsu is pretty much just standard one. But that doesn't mean that he isn't fun around, because his battle-loving sense of fighting and all that stuff and adventure is quite good. He's got a decent abilities with his fire. With dragon slaying magic, which can be quite appealing, I think, for most people. Okay, standard fire user. That's cool. All that stuff. So yeah. On one hand, I think he is fun to read and stuff, but sometimes, I suppose, he can also be a bit frustrating, I guess, to say the least. Mostly when, particularly in the later half of the series, when it looks like he's able to beat any opponent with, particularly with the power of friendship and stuff, which nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it becomes, I suppose, a bit lazy when it's And so, like, when these opponents are hyped up to be far, far stronger, but he ends up beating him in the end. The biggest example, I think, for most people, will be when he finally defeated, like, let's see, his brother Seth. But that's a get thing. I think one of the also biggest problems of Natsu is that I think, due to the fact that, okay, his main goal in the series is to find Igneo, but for a very long time in the series, well, granted, it's also partly due to the fact that Hiro's also, let's see, especially in the early arcs, gave them one arc each to one of the main characters, such as, Lucy, Gray, and Urza, to learn a bit about them. But it's like, due to stuff like that, and not to mention some of the following arcs, it ended up, let's see, going on adventures with stuff that doesn't seem to relate to the overall plot, though granted, I suppose you did have, like, let's see, the Ashirashon 6 arc did tie into the fact that there's other dragon slayers and all that stuff, and I suppose same with, like, the Phantom Lord arc, but no clues to finding where Igneo is and all that stuff. So it's like, the Igneo plot doesn't feel like it was, like, going anywhere. Let's see. Granted, Natsu gets this other, let's see, plot, let's see, with his mysterious connection to, let's see, though granted, I kind of probably already spoiled this bit already, but yeah. With, like, Zeref, when he meets him on Tanner Island, and, let's see, Zeref, let's see, believes that Natsu's the only one who can kill him and stuff. During the course of this, we later learn that, let's see, Zeref is Natsu's older brother, and Natsu is the Demon Book of End, or Ephirius Natsu Dragneel, or End, and it's a demon powerful enough to kill Zeref, and that's what Natsu's purpose is to be for the series. To defeat, let's see, Zeref. Though it also becomes to defeat Agnologia once he's finally reunited with Igneo, only to lose him when he is killed against Agnologia in the battle against Tartarus. So we do get a sort of like an interesting character arc where Natsu ends up attaining his goal by, let's see, the end of the first time skip, but then has a new goal following the second time skip / epilogue / war arc kind of thing. And then he ends up defeating his brother Zeref and then Agnologia, but it doesn't feel satisfying with the way they did it, as you will. Now, you can see how they beat them, and the fact that all the consequences seem to be completely had no effect whatsoever. It's like, okay, if he kills Zeph, he dies as well. That happens. So, like, if he uses his dragon power or demon powers, he turns into a dragon or demon, but he rejects both and becomes humans. It's stuff like that. I think it's like the stuff that makes Natsu fun to watch and interesting at times, but
it's like the details surrounding Natsu you think could be better handled.
The lore and all that stuff around him is pretty good, but all the stuff outside that kind of gets thing. I mean, there is like a rule of cool, like when he takes down both, let's see, the two dragon slayers from Sabretooth, but you feel like this could have been better handled if he went like either going Dragon Force himself, or at least using his Lightning Dragon, Fire Dragon Slayer mode, instead of just doing his just base mode, which many people had a bit of issues with that. So that's the stuff about Natsu that's kind of frustrating. Now for Haru, I think Haru pretty much had a hero's journey from the start to end and stuff, and it's always been tied with like.
I would argue Haru could be very much compared to Luke from the original trilogy.
Yeah, it's like. Granted, his father's not actually evil, but
no. Besides that.
Let's see, spoilers for Star Wars though. So apologies.
I feel like a lot of people know that by this point, so
yeah,
I think we're good.
Yeah, I mean, most people probably have seen Star Wars though. Apologize to the very rare few who don't. Haru is pretty much an island boy. Let's see, living with his sister. Let's see, just enjoying the life he has there, wanting to look after her. Though does wonder about his father when a mysterious warrior by the name of Shiba Rosas. By the way, Lucky Chi, if you want to comment in when I'm doing this narration, just unmute yourself and all that stuff. Now, just listen.
That's fine. Yeah, it's Shiba. Shiba's the one that
Yeah, Shiba.
That it comes across.
Yeah, I suppose you could say he's like, let's see, the Obi-Wan of the series, but yeah. But Shiba, Roses, suddenly lands with his companion Plu, this sort of like, little walking coned snowman kind of like thing, though apparently a dog, or at least it once was a dog. But then turned into this little thing called Plu. But yeah. But anyway, he claims to be the Rave Master. A wielder of this of this powerful sword that can turn into 10 forms and slay these dark magic items called Darkbrings, which are like magical abilities that increase a person's power, but also corrupts them and all that stuff. Sort of like the evil of mankind, I guess you could say. And it seems that Rave has chosen Hiro to be his next, or at least Shiba's chosen Hiro to be the next Rave Master. Hiro first refuses until he's attacked by members of Demon Card, led by Shuda, apparently an associate of his father's.
Mm-hmm.
As he acquires the power of Rave, defeats Demon Card, he sets out on a hero's journey to find the other pieces of Rave to complete all the swords and to defeat the Demon Card and maybe find clues about his father. During which he is joined by a mysterious girl, Early, in which he gradually falls in love with over time. All that stuff. He later also learns about where his father's been this entire time, particularly stop the Demon Card himself, with that he once helped create with his friend, who's now turned enemy due to misunderstandings and all that stuff. And we end up learning that Hiro is actually part of a sort of
like an ancient ancestral battle between the rare grooves and the Symphonians. Yeah,
he is the descendant of the royal family of the Cenubians, I believe.
Symphonians, I think is what they're called.
Yeah, though he has the surname Glory, I think, due to the fact that I think the father left the whole prince stuff behind. Though granted, the kingdom was destroyed way long ago. But yeah, but we learn that he's a descendant of royalty and all that stuff, and he has a rivalry with the Rave Girls, in which he ends up having to deal after his father and his father's best friend turned enemy have now both died. He must take on the son of his father's worst enemy. And as the journey goes, they learn more about Ellie, and as he acquires more Rave powers, he ends up fighting in an epic battle against Luca before he destroys the world and all that stuff. Lucia before he can destroy the world. How is able to makes ultimate sacrifice, but due to the power of I forget what it is.
The Stellar Memory.
Memory.
Okay, it's Star Memory from the Tokyo Pop run before. I know for those of you guys, I need a history lesson. I know the license for Tokyo Pop when it came to the Rave Master volumes expired, and I think Kodansha took over for the last 3 volumes, which is why there's a translations shift from Stellar Memory from Star Memory to Stellar Memory, but yeah. Same meaning almost.
But he is able to reunite with the girl he loves, Ellie, confessing to her just before the whole ultimate sacrifice thing, and even before the final battle, if you will, asking to live with him. Is able to reunite with her and get married to her and even start a family, which you end up seeing the son throughout. Since
the first volume, I think.
The bonus volume things as of a bonus chapter thing. It's like you follow this mysterious boy who is currently being looked after by this flower talking sun thing called Nakajima that stays on his and his sister's house for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Levin Glory or something, but yeah.
Well, we don't find that out until technically Volume 17, but, you know.
But yeah. I have to admit, for Haru, let's see, he is pretty much, let's see, well, maybe not as, let's see, perhaps maybe you could also say he's I suppose, a standard shonen protagonist. I mean, he does have his silly moments and stuff, but he's a lot more calm and all that stuff. He's not like one of those idiotic.
He kind of reminds me of Ichigo in a lot of ways.
Yeah, or maybe Midoriya in some ways.
I could see that.
At least with the calm and just like his tendency to panic, at least, or something. But yeah,
I mean, compared to like Natsu and you could even argue Shiki to an extent. Well, and to be fair, Eden Zero's not finished yet, but from what we've seen of Shiki so far, I don't think he's the more calm, cool, and collected protagonist out of the three that Hiro's made.
But he's very much the calm one and all that stuff. He's a bit more mellow. Granted, that doesn't mean that, let's see. But yeah, it's quite interesting with the trials he goes through to, let's see, wield the sword and all that, to wield the powers of the Rave, let's see, and the losses he takes through it, because during the travels, he loses his father, he loses some of his friends, he even loses some of his enemies that he doesn't want to die, and would strive to him to try and make sure no one else dies as much as he can, save as many lives as he can, and you can see why he wants that. You can see why he wants to achieve peace as much as possible. He's able to make friends wherever he's going, all that stuff. Okay, standard shonen stuff, but it feels like it's earned, especially he's like a noble knight on the journey kind of thing.
And I think the biggest thing for Haru is that you actually see how he matures from that naive boy that you meet on Garage Island into the hero at the very end.
But he still never compromises his ideals and all that stuff. So.
Yeah.
Let's see, and he does get consequences, like I said, losing like his father and then his master and then a few others, friends. But yeah, the only time when I said, granted, he does sort of come back, which it's a bit of a, I guess you could say a sort of Dex Machina kind of thing, but
with the world that Raves is, with what you have in Rave Master and the world that's established, it's like, okay, that actually does kind of make sense.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, it's a little silly, but it works, and it gets a satisfying ending with particularly the romance part with him and Ellie, as you see it build up throughout the series, where they confess to each other and how they are reunited, and eventually, get married, have a child, stuff. In many ways,
I'd argue this is on the same tier as Edward and Wenry from Fullmetal Alchemist.
Yeah, it's one of those relationships that's just as satisfying as that. Maybe even more so because you actually got to spend more time because Ellie actually comes along with the journey.
Yeah,
but it's definitely one of those. This is how you do a relationship right kind of things. Which
all you modern shonen series out there.
Yes, but. Well, granted, or even shonen.
Although Demon Slayer did do a pretty decent one, I can't say every modern shonen series.
Or even shonen series that came out around the same time as Rave Master, because, funny enough, people, Rave Master is around the same came out around the same time as a particular manga series me and Lucky Chi like to rant about now and then. But yeah, yeah. So I definitely say Rave Master gets the win for this because I think Haru's journey. It feels like it's the main focus for most of the thing. I mean, and his main plot also ties into it for much. Granted, it does happen with Natsu towards the end, but due to the fact that he's trying to find the Dragon Egg Neo, but there are many times when it feels like it's going nowhere and all that stuff. So
I think you described that very well. Because I totally agree. Haru's journey, like, you can see where it starts and where it ends, and, like, it feels satisfying where, yeah, to be fair, you can see Natsu's journey too, but the road you get to that conclusion and where it all leads for Natsu, I think could be better handled.
Not to mention, it feels like Haru does occasionally lose now and then, while Natsu feels like there are times when it feels like he should have lost, but ends up winning due to the power of friendship or something.
Yeah. Okay, Natsu has lost a few battles. Like, he lost against Guildart, and
He
You
also
could,
gets that
you could
owl
say.
from
I was going to say he did lose against Silver, so he has had a few losses, but I don't think his losses are as big as his victories. I'd say.
So it's because I do remember how some people when Tartarus first started, you got like this villain called Jackal who did quite a good first impression, and then he ends up seeing him again. You see him fight against Natsu, and you're like, oh boy, Natsu's gonna win now, and it's like you just hype this guy up only to get him blitzy butt whooped by Natsu. Like, stuff like that, but with like Hiro, he can lose the fight first round, but then come back and win the second round, kind of thing.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like with Haru, it feels like earned because, like, yeah, like okay, because eventually, and it happens in every shonen series. Like, yeah, the main character loses, and he comes back, but you got to make sure it's earned. And
not to mention, I feel like Natsu kind of gets stuck in a sort of thing where, let's see. Even though Natsu ends up beating the big bad, he still always ends up being weaker than like Urza or Luxus or something, even though he probably should have passed them and all that stuff. But anyway, I'll let you go on with what you want to say. Let's see.
Actually, you pretty much said a lot of the stuff I wanted to say, and yeah, like you said, Blue, it is a hero's journey, and you see how he grows, but how he also sticks to his ideals too. And you could argue Natsu kind of had that, but not really.
I mean, you definitely get Natsu doing a speech about the power of friendship, but that's just about it, really. And there's no like deeper themes or something like that, but which Rave Master kind of did. But yeah, go on.
No, but and like here's the thing: like you had the two biggest subplots that kept me intrigued for Natsu was the final confrontation with Zeref, and especially learning about his ties to Zeref and him being, his brother, and then of course the goal of defeating Agnologia after what happens at Igneo. And the thing is that none of those aspects, yeah, they conclude, but they're not satisfying. Like, okay, I'll say this: the final fight between Natsu and Zeref, I'd argue, is good. It's not bad, actually. It's actually a pretty good final battle. My big issue comes from with the aftermath of that fight, where it kind of felt like Natsu didn't care. Because I thought, okay, we were going to get this big emotional payoff between the Natsu and Zeref relationship, and at the very end, it's like, really? Now, you could argue 100-Year Quest, we eventually get that, but
you could argue 100-Year Quest fixes lots of things for Natsu and for Natsu's character, but let's see, we're not really talking about 100-Year Quest now, are we?
No, we're specifically just talking about the main series. So if we're just looking at it from Fairy Tail up to Alvarez, then yeah, I think Natsu, again, he's a fun character, but the journey that he goes through and the way it pays off, I think, could have been very, very well better handled, in my opinion. And like I said, this is where I feel like Haru supersedes Natsu in so many areas, especially when you consider all the struggles he goes through, all the hardships, and the growth he goes through too. Like I think it feels more natural and more organic. But it's like I said, Blue. Also by sticking to his ideals to the very end. But yeah, no, like I think out of the two, I would definitely say Haru gets the win. So that it goes to Rave Master. Which now brings us over to the main female protagonist. In this case, Ellie, or Risha Valentine, which we eventually find out. I mean, yeah, we eventually find that out. But, or, yeah, let's say Ellie. So, the main female protagonist, Ellie, versus Lucy Heartfilia. And once again, I'll pass it over to Blue to share his thoughts on both these.
I guess I'll start with Lucy Heartfilia, since, like I said, Fairy Tail is what I'm in. Funny enough, Lucy Heartfilia was probably the first character I learned about from Fairy Tail, due to the fact when the time I first learned about Fairy Tail was actually from a fan-made Nami versus Lucy edited video in which you had like, let's see, he managed to edit two fights that that Nami had and Lucy had to make into like one sort of fight kind of thing. So it's like that was when I first learned about Fairy Tail, which also gave me a first glimpse of the implied fan service stuff that you kind of get with Fairy Tail. So this gave me the impression. Okay, so this gave me the impression. Okay, the Fairy Tail seems to be something that, let's see, for the more, I suppose you could say, mature audience. I guess.
In a way.
But or something that should not be seen by little kids, at least. But yeah.
I'd say if you're 14, 15.
But yeah,
it works.
But yeah, so Lucy is, let's see, a celestial spirit mage that wants to join Fairy Tail. Let's see, during the which she develops quite the bond with Natsu, and then eventually we learn that she's part of the famous Hot Feeler clan, which is, let's see, due to her father become very rich, though it's more of actually, though it seems the Hot Feeler name is actually more on her mother's side. As we learn that she's a descendant of a long line of famous celestial spirit mages, but the father, I guess, made the Gritty family really wealthy, but she ran away due to how neglectful her father was and all that stuff to be with a guild with bonds and family and all that stuff. So there, you can't get that for sort of like a backstory for her.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. And during the course of the journey, she acquires 12 keys, which seem to have the purpose of like opening this special spirit, this sort of like time gate that allows to travel back to the past or future, which somewhat plays a role in the later series. But yeah. Though, of course, Lucy also has like a goal of trying to become a novelist, though that doesn't always get brought up within the series because it's more of just like a personal goal rather than a plotline goal kind of thing.
I mean, you get little instances in between arcs where you see her in her room just writing, but there's not like a lot of emphasis on it.
But yeah, but it's mostly due to the fact that yeah. Now she's not like someone that directly affects the plot per se, but she does have ties to it, particularly with like, let's see, with her bond of Natsu, due to the fact that he's actually the descendant from the celestial spirit name. I think, is it Lila, or is that her mother?
Layla's her mother. Her ancestral is I think Anna Hartfilia.
Anna Hartfilia, who worked with let's see, Zeph and Igneo to teleport the Natsu and his fellow Dragon Slayers 400 years into the future. Let's see, in order to like, let's see, become so the dragons could become powerful. Dragon Slayers and the Dragon Slayers could be powerful enough to take down Agnologia, while Natsu takes on Zeph and that stuff. As a result, let's see, Natsu, I think, apparently developing a bit of a crush on
Anna, yeah.
Let's see, due to the fact I think Lucy sort of probably reminds Natsu of Anna, even though he forgot her. It's probably drawn to her, and that's why he's always hanging out with her, probably. But not to say that he hasn't developed his own sort of feelings and stuff. But granted, I know. No, granted, the romance between Natsu and Lucy is more teased rather than properly developed.
I think you described it very well. Is that like, and I know a lot of people like the Nalu relationship, and I have nothing against
especially our fellow Narusaku fans who, after what Naruto did, we would like to see one pink-haired and blonde get together.
No, it's true. No, but like here's the thing, and like I said, I have nothing against the Natsu and Lucy relationship, and I think it could work. But I always kept bringing up Rave Master, like even to Blue, and I was like, in Rave Master, you actually get to see that romance blossom between Haru and Ellie, and here with Natsu and Lucy, you don't really get that. Yeah, you get moments between the two of them, but I don't think it builds like towards a romance per se. Now, 100-Year Quest again is a different case altogether because you could kind of see the pieces coming together there, but as far as the mainline series goes, again, you get moments between Natsu and Lucy, and yeah, you could say, okay, yeah, that showcases like how much they've grown and how strong their bond is together. But to push it to that next step, I think you needed more. But that's my take.
Lucy is a bit more, I suppose you could say, aggressive with Natsu a few times, particularly when he enters her room and stuff like that.
It's either a kick to the face or no. She slapped him in the face in her room. I don't think so.
I think he slaps him when he groups her now and then, which I'm going to get to that in a second. But let's see. In many ways, Lucy doesn't have any real ties to the story, but it does have enough of a connection to see, okay, how Lucy and Natsu got connected and why she's tagged along. And to be fair, Lucy, unlike most female shonen protagonists, does actually get, for the most part, at least one fight for an arc, at least for the most part.
Yeah, like you actually do see her contribute to the fights, which I do appreciate that.
I mean,
that's pretty cool.
And sometimes I'd say she probably gets more fights than even Ellie does in the original series, because sometimes I don't think Ellie actually partakes in the fights, but of course she does. But yeah, let's see. There's only like one or two arcs where I think that Lucy doesn't. And no, granted, and there's also some cases where Lucy does fight solo fights, but she also fights in team battles or does get team ups with Natsu. At least, if she can't beat her opponent singly, she does at least team up with one other person, but usually Natsu. But for the most part, it's kind of nice. But yeah, she's never going to be the strongest character in the series. I think most people have probably gotten that. But yeah, but that doesn't mean that she isn't fun and all that stuff, and does contribute to the plot. But I think my biggest issue with Lucy is.
Lucy, after a certain point in Fairy Tail, kind of becomes the eye candy girl of Fairy Tail.
I think you mentioned, as I mentioned, what Natsu did to Lucy earlier. It tends to happen more often than I think me and Lucky Chi would like to tolerate, I suppose you could say.
I want to say like. Because no, there were fan service moments with Lucy in the beginning, but I don't think it really ramped up until I'd say until Grandmaster Games. But
yeah,
that's my take.
It's because you could argue it was starting to get a bit more obvious with Tenno Island, but that was mostly to the bass. But you tend to notice, let's see, Lucy gets into more inappropriate moments happen to her, particularly Grand Magic Games when you had one dragon that came from the past, but the ability to remove
Zirconis,
the ability to remove
clothes, I remember
and it's like, let's see, it's mostly to remove armor and all that stuff just so you can eat humans, and it's like, okay, he particularly targets Lucy just because, well, he prefers to eat girls, but it's just mostly done just so you can see. It's like, we don't really want, it's like, this is really not the time and the place for
fan service,
Yeah, fan service. It's like, okay, if it's just like baths or something like that, or I can maybe tolerate and all that stuff. It's like,
I mean, even Oda does that for One Piece, where you have like Nami and baths and whatnot, but that's fine.
Yeah. Now, granted, the only one that might be questionable is the Thriller Bark one, but that's mostly due to what happens to Nami there. But that's discussion for another day. But yeah, well, granted, I think Punk Hazard's where Oda goes a bit too far. But yeah,
I know what you're referring to, but don't.
Yeah, but so yeah, it's just mostly that. It's like, I think if it wasn't for the fan service, I think I might even make Lucy win the list, but now I think it's time I go to Ellie. Let's see. Ellie's a bit interesting because she's the only one of Hero's three main girls that does not actually appear in the first chapter. Let's see.
Yeah, I didn't notice that until I went back and read. I was like, that's interesting, because Rebecca shows up in the first chapter of Eden Zero. Lucy shows up in the first chapter of Fairy Tail. Ella doesn't show up until chapter 6, which I thought was kind of cool.
And not to mention, it's, I believe, the 6th chapter of Rave Master is in the 2nd volume. So the first volume, the only main character to appear is Haru. So it's like, and I guess Plu, but yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a bit strange because that doesn't normally happen with at least most shonen manga. At least you at least get because okay, most of the shonen manga usually start with mainly just the main character, and then okay, look, granted, some more modern manga start to have the main rival appear in the first chapter. Like, particularly, I believe My Hero, of course, and I believe Black Clover. I think, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
Let's see. They started putting rivals in the first chapter, but for the most part,
I was going to say, I think the only exception to the rule probably Noelle, because I think Noelle doesn't show up in the manga until chapter 5?
But yeah,
4.
Yeah, but okay. Granted, Dragon Ball did have like I suppose you could argue one of the main female for Dragon Ball, but yeah, most shonen manga like okay, I guess you could also say Rukia for Bleach, but yeah. But most let's see manga like Naruto and One Piece don't really have like let's see any of the Straw Hat crew members or members of Team 7 appear. You don't see any of them until like either the second, third, fourth, or fifth chapters of their respective series and all that stuff. So it's like Eri, you kind of get a bit late. So I've probably ranted on a bit about let's see other manga, but yeah. So Eri comes in a bit late, so it might make you question how she will tie into the main plot. Let's see if she's like only appears in the second volume, but due to the fact that let's see how ends up meeting her rather in a bit of an appropriate manner on Haru's end, but mostly a gambling thing because she's a gambler. So there's that.
Got the Nami trading her. Actually, well, no, not Nami's more money driven, but you could argue.
But Ellie, but it turns out Ellie is a character that has amnesia. Let's see, and cannot remember the last. Let's see, remember until most of her the first 15 to 16 years of her life, at least. Mm-hmm. At least, I think she's been at least a year by herself with amnesia, but she ends up meeting Haru, being impressed by his skills and his goals and stuff. Ends up tagging along. Also believes that he might also be able to help her find the memories of her past, and journeys with them and make lots of friends. As she learns that she seems to have this connection to Risha Valentine, a girl that apparently died 50 years ago while creating the Rave. So she tries to help Haru with searching for the Rave stones as a keys of, learning about her past. But at the same time, she starts to develop romantic feelings for Haru. And making friends along the way, even taking part in a few fights, though, that stuff. Contributing quite a bit and all that stuff, but yeah. And during the arc before the final arc, we end up learning her past when Haru and Segan go back in time, and she learns that she's actually Risha Valentine after quite a few clues throughout the series, particularly when she ends up dancing just as good as
Risha, yeah.
And during I think the Blue Guardians arc.
It was during. It was after you take care of the little mini arc with Seacard. I know that. That's when we got that chapter.
So yeah, so the Blue Guardians arc. So yeah, it's just particularly her skilled dancers. But yeah, but once she learned, she is actually Risha Valentine, and she did not die, but instead was put in a stasis for 50 years, losing her memories in order to help, the King of Sophomores, son or descendant, one of his descendants at least, which ends up being Haru Glory with her power of Ethereon because that's what helped create the Rave Master, to help Haru destroy the dark brings, and particularly the powerful one, I think, the King of Endless, I believe. But yeah, teaming up with Haru to destroy the Endless. She even makes the ultimate sacrifice of losing the boy she's come to fall in love with in order to save the world and all that stuff, before confessing her feelings and then losing her memories. But due to Rave Master's happy ending, Haru comes back. She remembers. They have a very emotional reunion let's see, become a couple, get married, and then they have a kid. So there's that. I'd say, so I definitely say of the two, Ellie is probably the more better female protagonist, at least a bit more. I suppose you could say more character to her. Let's see, due to the fact that this is during the time when Hiro wasn't using, like, I suppose, fan service a bit extensively, I guess.
Yeah, like this is something I always describe to Blue, but Rave Master Hero was like Hero at his prime.
Yeah, so it's like let's say more tame, though. There were some instances where I think, okay, Hero, you're kind of pushing the button here, particularly when everyone got drunk at a party. But
that was like the one instance I was like, all right. Aside from that little instance, I think all the other moments are pretty. And here's the thing: like, even when you have like Ellie in a bikini or something, like, it's not like there was like heavy emphasis on it. It was just like, okay, she's
it's just
totally
wearing a swimsuit, but. Okay, you could, let's see, there are some funny moments where you have, like, how accidentally walking in is like, yeah, but sometimes she's a bit oblivious to, like, the indecency, or at least due to her naivety, I guess you could say, but yeah. She's a fun character to enjoy. I wouldn't say she's, like, a tsundere or even shy girl or anything like that.
No. I don't think there's any traits like that. I'd say this. So, I definitely say out of all of Hero's female protagonists, she's the most ditziest.
Yeah, she's more of a ditzy character, but...
Which I think is kind of adorable. I think that's kind of cute.
Yeah, I mean, she tends to be a bit of a gambler, well, she's quite successful at, and she seems to have this fascination with bugs, but yeah.
Particularly when she sees Pluto, like, it's like, oh, come on, you know Pluto will win. He's a bug. I was like...
it's like, that does baffle her, but yeah, she has fun interactions. It's not just her relationship with Hiro that develops. She develops with all the other characters that she encounters with, particularly like Mukasa, Let, Plu, the mascots, and even like Julia and the other female members. Though, granted, she does sometimes get jealous when.
Which I was going to bring up is that, like, unlike with Lucy and Rebecca, again, it's just Eden Zero is still ongoing, so maybe that'll happen with Rebecca down the line. But at the very least, compared to Lucy. Yeah, Ellie gets super, super jelly when there's another girl Hiro interacts, so she's like...
Yeah. Granted, it looked like Fairy Tail kind of missed an opportunity with a love triangle with Lucy, Lasana, and...
There was. I missed there.
But yeah. But granted, there's no, like, let's see, deep love triangle in Rave Master. Let's see, it's still mostly just Hiro and Ellie, though there's an occasional girl that comes along, though. But it's not like, let's see, a particular manga series we know, which the love triangle eventually destroyed it. But yeah. Let's see. So yeah, I think. Let's see. Ellie may not get as many fights as Lucy, but I think she's a bit more well-rounded.
She's more integral to the story, and I think, and that's what I think is always important about, like, any story, whether it's a shonen manga or just a story in general. Like, the role of a main female character, at least to me, is like they have that status because, you know, they're integral to, like, the overall story, right? And I think Ellie is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. Now, granted, that doesn't mean that characters that should be integral to the overall story should, like, matter. I mean, even Lucy without, like, the let's see, Heartfilia family, its interactions does take a part in the story quite a bit.
It does.
She gets a bit of a fight. And it could have worked with, like, a particularly other manga series if the mangaka continued and did not listen to, like, popularity stuff and his editors, but there we go. And I guess you could even argue Hermione Granger, let's see, doesn't really have any connection to, like, the Harry Voldemort battle, but...
That's true. She doesn't.
A lot to the plot, but I definitely say Ellie, at least due to the fact that
I compare Ellie to maybe. Well, I was gonna say Annabeth, but I don't think Annabeth. Well, no. I think I could say Annabeth just because she's tied to the whole God storyline too. So there's that.
But yeah, I think just due to the fact that Ellie's a bit more rounded character, and the fact that she isn't tied down by
fan service. Yeah.
later tendencies to use fan service, even in the Heroes manga, funny enough, though. Granted, except...
The stuff with Ellie, though, even in the Heroes manga, is pretty tame compared to
yeah.
Lucy.
Or Rebecca, for that matter.
No, it's so funny, because even Ellie, like, comments on Rebecca and Lucy's like, you girls just love showing off, and I'm like, I wonder why.
But yeah. So it seems like maybe, who knows, Hiro has a bit of a soft spot where he does not want to, let's see, overexpose Ellie or not, but either way, once again, I'm giving Rave Master the win.
Same. As I kind of interject my thoughts with Blue on this too, so I would definitely say Ellie takes the crown on this one too.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you have anything else to comment on.
No, not really.
Fair enough. I guess we usually win 4 lives here. We usually do one at a time, really, but
since it's just you and me, we just interject our thoughts and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Next is the supporting characters, right?
Yeah, then the supporting characters, and specifically, I divided supporting and side characters, because supporting characters, from what I remember, is like they have more importance to the story, but they're not like main character tier. And then you have the side characters who have like a purpose for like a particular section of the story. So examples I could think of for supporting characters is, say, like Musica, Seacard, Reina, Belnica, Let, Julia. Naibo, you could argue, falls under side characters, but he does have his importance too. And of course, Blue. And then side character examples you could say are like Shiba, Musica's grandfather, Nagisa, Rosa, Go, Haru's sister Catlia, Celia, and so on and so on.
Okay. Well, for the side supporting characters, the main ones for Fairy Tail are the members of Team Natsu, which are Happy, Urza, Grey, Ritzy, Wendy, and Carla. But you could also probably include Gadjo, Levy, and Juvia as well, I believe.
Yeah, you can include them in.
You see, so yeah.
So,
So I guess I'll start with Fairy Tail. I guess with let's see, for Grey, he's Natsu's rival, an ice mage, so it's like the opposite magic, so that sort of, Ritzy, as Lucy points out, probably is why the two are sort of like at each other's heads, because they have subconsciously the opposing elements to each other, as you will, fire and ice, as you will. Like, Game of Thrones and all that stuff, but yeah. And with so that's why Natsu and Grey are at each other's odds, though Grey has the habit of always stripping, which can be a bit funny, but it's also a bit of I guess you could say Hiro doing male fan service a bit, as let's see, you definitely got a lot of good fangirls in the Fairy Tail fandom pinning for Grey, probably.
Oh my, he took off his boxers.
Yeah, so you get that. But yeah, other than that, so let's see. So yeah, Grey is kind of, and other than Grey, you've got Urza, who's the strongest female in Fairy Tail, and let's see. So it's an S class. So I guess you could say she's kind of like the Kakashi of the Team Natsu group, as you will.
You could say that.
Let's see. He's like the elite Jonin or something like that. The elite member of the group that is sort of the leader, I guess. At least when Naruto. Let's see, when Naruto was at part 1 and all that stuff. But yeah. So you kind of got that with Urza. Let's see, where she's an orphan who was let's see, took into a Tower of Babel, I think it was, or no, that's DC. I'm thinking the Tower of
Heaven.
The Tower of Heaven, in which she was a slave to build this tower to revive the Dark Wizard Zeph, where she fell in love with this boy named Jalal, who ended up getting corrupted by a tower and kidnapped and forcing her to leave, while leaving all the friends behind, whereas he corrupts them and all that stuff. So you got that for, let's see, Jalal, Elsa's backstory and all that stuff. And for Grey, his family and master were killed by the demon Drololo. That was also had a connection to Zeph. So those two sort of tie into the story, particularly their lives have been affected by like Zerf, who took Gray's family and mentor for him, while for Urza, the boy she loved got corrupted by, I suppose, someone that was Utir who was pursuing Zeref and all that stuff. So you got that. Other than that, you also have fellow Dragon Slayers like Wendy and Gargel, who were like part of of guilds that either allied or opposed Fairy Tail, but later joined Fairy Tail after their guilds were disbanded and that stuff.
I'd argue, Gajil and Gray have a lot more importance during the final section of the Fairy Tail story.
Yeah, so I'll get to that in a minute. So,
yeah.
And then you have like Levy, who is a bit of a minor character at first and sort of befriends, but becomes a bit more essential when she develops a romance with Gargil.
Oh yeah.
As she's the leader of like a minor group called Team Shadowgear, who was regarded as probably the weakest team in Fairy Tail.
Mm-hmm.
But she's probably the only significant mage of it due to her extensive knowledge. And then you also have Happy and Carla, who are Exeeds, who were born from like eggs that were transported from a parallel universe called Elseworld in order to survive their queen, who predicted their people's destruction. But it resulted in going back to like Elseworld to when the king of that world tried to steal magic from Fenor by kidnapping everyone from Magnolia Town and turning them into a sort of crystal and all that stuff, using the magic energy from them, something like that. So you get like a sort of like, I guess you could say that's probably like one of the few filler sharks for Fairy Tail, but it's a pretty good one if you ask me. But
I agree. That is.
But Happy is mostly just like to be Natsu's wingman and to fly him to the battles and all that stuff. But yeah. Anyway. Getting to like a Grey and Urza, they have their moments where they are important to the story, but more of just they're kind of there, usually to be like the ones that take on the second or third strongest members.
I'd say Grey has a little bit more importance than Urza does, but
Grey does get more essential to the story, particularly later on when it turns out that particularly bits where he has to deal with like his master's daughter, who was trying to revive Surf and try and save her.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, it took a while, but he learns that his father ends up is alive, and granted, ends up tricking him to thinking that he's been possessed by Deliola, but in fact he's been resurrected by one of the members of Tartarus to become a part of the elite team there, but he's also at the time learned Ice Demon Slayer magic in order to kill their leader, the Book of END, a fire mage, a fire demon, as you will. So Grey eventually gets the goal of pursuing killing N, though it then turns out to be like Natsu, which has to try and kill his sort of rival / best friend / frenemy, I guess you could say. Which eventually is stopped by Urza, and he tries to sacrifice himself, but Natsu convinces him not to, because there's always like this magic that he could sacrifice his life with, but Natsu always stops him from doing it in the end, showing that despite their differences, they get along together. Oh yeah, I should also mention that during this journey, Grey sort of gets a sort of stalker turned admirer, / eventual lover kind of thing of sorts with Juvia, who was like found him pretty attractive at first, and then is able to get her out of her gloomy Rain mood, as Rain always followed her until she met Grey, and then she sort of joins the guild most to try and get close to him and stuff, though does sometimes creep her out with her her ways of expressing her feelings, but it's not really until like she kills a demon that brought Grey's father back to life where the two start to get a bit closer, when Juva is willing to
yeah, Tartarus did a lot for the Grey and Julia relationship.
Because it's like Juvia feels like after doing this, like she does not feel like she has the right to have Gray's love or stuff like that. But Gray eventually becomes thankful for freeing her father and stuff, and they sort of develop a sort of off-screen a bit, let's see, possible romance while they're going training for a year and stuff. But other than that, I will admit some of the more earlier things, I don't know. Gruvia could have easily become another Sasusaku for me.
It had potential. I'll say that. It had the potential, which luckily we didn't go down that route, which was a good thing.
So there's that. Now for Urza, for many people at first, Urza was probably the badass character, and one of the reasons why probably people got into fairy tales because they're like a badass female character that can kick butt. This is awesome, and I suppose she had a bit sort of interesting relationship with the mysterious Sirgan that later turned out to be Jalal and stuff.
Who I should say, I guess you could also lump in Jalal with the supporting characters too.
Yeah, Jalal was a sort of like an antagonist at first, but then as he got defeated, had his memories erased, and then then met Elsa again, learned of his mistakes, tried to make amends, so first trying to kill himself, but then Elsa helped him to, and then he ends up joining with a few former members of Gilmore Heart, particularly even Graves Master's daughter, and her sort of like another member to form crime syndicate to like stop Zerf and all that stuff and take down guilds while doing the 7-year time skip kind of thing. So you have that. And granted, I feel like the Jalal's redemption, it builds up. It doesn't really tie much into the final story. I mean, there's like
it's not until the final chapter where you see how he gets pardoned, but you wish that there was more emphasis on that.
More emphasis on like his redemption story, and also a bit more him contributing to the plot because he does pick up now and then, and there is an interesting final. He does take part in a very interesting battle against one of the final 12 bad guys with like.
Let's see. He shows up at Tower of Heaven, then he shows up in Erasion's. Then he doesn't show up again until Grand Magic Games. I know that.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Empire arc where one of the
Alvarez arc.
Yeah, one of the 12 bodyguards of Zeref has the ability to bring back people from the past that are dead from the past. Thing.
Yeah.
He ends up encountering the character he killed. That was a childhood friend of Urza and the brother of another character that's a minor character and a side character, I guess. But so that was a bit of an interesting thing. But other than that, it's not that interesting. But other than that, he's not really, I'd say, essential as I think the series tried to make him out to be. But to Urza, now, so she's pretty much like, the badass that usually takes down the second strongest bad guy or something in the series. For example, Phantom Lord, she takes on the strongest member of, the Element 4.
Yeah.
All that stuff, so there's stuff like that. But, as time went on, Urza's victories became a bit more ridiculous, and Deus Machina, and
prime example. Only her arm was good, and she was able to defeat the dragon.
Yes, her mother, but we'll get to that in a bit. But there's also she gets last sort of a hype moment I saw from people when it comes to liking Urza was when she took on 100 monsters in the Grand Magic Games. I think I even saw King of Lightning's video of that chapter saying Urza's one of the 5 greatest female characters in manga. But sometime afterwards, Urza started getting a bit more DX Machina or ass pulls, as you will. For example, getting an invincible armor, that a direct moment, and then Tartarus, she ends up beating one of her opponent because even though she loses all 5 senses, and the happiest explanation is because she's Urza.
And here's the thing: the explanation you could have had was that she had an artificial eye. You could have just said that. I was like, okay, fine, that makes sense, but
no. And then, of course, finally, the most probably infuriating for most people is when she's fighting her own mother, as it turns out, let's see, it's a bit of a stretch, really, but her mother is the first dragon slayer and the one who suggested it, who turned into a dragon and had been carrying. And during that time, she was in her womb. Elsa's been inside her for 400 years, which may or may not explain why she's so powerful or something. If you want to go with bloodlines and stuff, but. As she ends up beating her, she ends up beating her with every bone in her body except her ankle, and is able to slice a giant meteor.
Now, you could argue she had Wendy's assistance on that, but,
It's okay, you break her body, her body is broken, but she still breaks a freaking meteor. It's like, this is broken. It's like one of the worst Aprils I have seen in any manga series, and that includes the Kakashi Sasano, I'm gonna say.
Which is saying a lot.
Oh boy, but yeah. Now for Gargiel and that stuff, he has a nice little sort of like, rival to Natsu, event enemy turned to like ally, and even though he at first beat up Levi and all that stuff, which might make some people question these two. Okay, these two first met by being enemies, and he hurt her and all that stuff, which is the only questionable thing. But as the two interact more, the two gradually come close to each other. Where it looks like Gargiel is about to die. He says, like, I wish to spend the rest of my life with her, but of course he ends up surviving due to a sort of DX machina or sorts. Ends up forming a relationship with Levi that implies that they're having a child in the last chapter, which is confirmed in the 100-year quest. So there's that. And Wendy sort of becomes like the 5th or maybe even 6th or 7th main character, because like there's also Wendy and Carla. She eventually she's like the latest of the but after the 5 main mages of Team Natsu, she's the 5th and last member to join. So that's a bit interesting. A sort of like latecomer, if you will. I guess you could say he's like like the later characters of Rave Master. So there's that. She joins and ends up being like the sort of healer type character for the series and contributes to now and then the fights, but I don't think she's like, although with the main story plot thing, but besides maybe the dragons, the missing dragons, but she does help Natsu, particularly in the final battle against Agnologia with the other dragon slayers, as well as Gargiel and the other ones, but yeah. So I think she's, decent for the most part. The only thing that does infuriate me is that, okay, it looked like Hero's about to kill her off, but then last minute, no, it doesn't happen. So it's like, don't tease that. I suppose the only other issue I might have with Wendy is that Hiro makes too many jokes about her wanting to be a bit more, let's say, mature.
That's a good way of putting it. I mean, I guess for a girl her age, I could kind of see that, but,
Now, let's see, I suppose, to get to Rave Master, the main,
the main supporting characters you have in that is Musica, who's Gray's lookalike. I'd argue the prototype for Gray. And then Seagard being the original Jalal.
Let's see, but without the Urza romance to go with it, so. But anyway, but yeah, you got Mukasa, who is
Musica.
Of the his first name is Hamuro Miya, but he is one of the last few survivors of the
Musica clan.
Yeah, the silver claimers that can create any weapons with silver and all that stuff. And whose grandfather actually forged the Rave stones for like their first use and stuff. So he eventually, so due to Haru being a bit of a sort of thief and gang lead at first, but then he meets Haru and Ellie, he reunites with his grandfather, eventually not really joining Haru's group at first, or like the Rave Warriors, if you will.
It takes a bit before he shows back up.
But it's more of the following arc. He officially joins them and stuff. But yeah. But he ends up joining them when he realizes that he could probably find the goal of finding the Silver Rave, destroying it for the mentor who sort of became his father figure after his family was massacred. So Yeah, so he ends up joining Haro just to do that because let's see, and all that stuff. So, which he eventually finds the Silver Ray, but let's see, no, it sort of destroys it in its current form. It eventually ends up becoming like his main weapon, particularly the
Yeah,
sacrifice of a fellow Silver Claimer. That he sort of had a sort of, I guess you could say it's an enemies to lover thing, but we'll get that with the antagonists, I guess. But yeah. Eventually, he ends up, let's see, properly developing Haru's, let's see, 10th weapon, which officially becomes his main sword, as each Rave is unique to each Rave user, really.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so that means the original one gets destroyed after his grandfather uses it as a testing thing against the current one. Which is kind of sad to see that sword go, but heck.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
But yeah, let's see, he often, let's see, contributes to the fight and even helps Haru and Ellie in the final fight and all that stuff, particularly protecting Ellie as chaos is going around. Granted, I do wish she kind of had like a final opponent, so there's that. And let's see, but anyway, for the other main characters, there's Plu, the sort of dog turned snowman-like thing that has the power to destroy dark brings, I guess.
Let's just say he's Hiro's original mascot, and I'll say this: unlike with Fairy Tale Happy, because Eden Zero Happy is a completely different case. But unlike with Fairy Tale Happy, Blue has a lot more importance to the overall story for
well, he mainly just got like one major arc that kind of focused on his like past and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue it was kind of fillerish, but yeah. But no, I do remember it is the arc that got me into Fairy Tale because that's when I started reading it. Let's see, I just ended up picking a random page and it's like, okay, I'll read this. And it's like, okay, this is a pretty good arc, but yeah, I definitely needed some context for things, but anyway. But so yeah, Plu contributes quite a bit and even helps Haru when he goes berserk at one point. Let's see, the Ninth Power, so there's that. The other major character that's sort of like with that times along with Haru and Ellie is Jet or Let, I guess, depending on the translation, I think. A member of the
Dragon Race, yeah.
Let, a member of the Dragon Race, that's part of this other parallel magical world that is made up of all these magical creatures that has had issues with humans due to discriminations between and all that stuff, because, yeah. So Jet, who originally is a member of like these 5 guards of this tower that creates Darkbring weapons for the main bad guy, but after being pressed by Haru, eventually joins him. Originally, when you meet Let, he has like this sort of like dragon, like lizard form thing, or like humanoid lizard form thing. Which, to be honest, I do kind of find this design a bit more cooler than his later one, which I think Hiro later reused for like Gray's original, let's see, rival from, when he was training under Ul and for Ice Mage, but at least that might be where the prototype for it at least came from. But so yeah, Let eventually journeys Haru just so he can travel with him, maybe have a rematch and fight more, but eventually he ends up learning that his lover, Julia, who he thought to be dead, was turned into a primal dragon by his like rival in in his village's people, Jigen, I believe, who was also a member of the Urashion 6. Eventually joins with Haru to save Julia, which eventually he does, and then and the two become sort of like a reunite with a couple thing, and then comes to assist Haru generally as a friend afterwards, and even willing to sacrifice his like human form kind of thing to turn into a full-on dragon if it meant defeating one of the ultimate bad guys, one of the 4 demon lords. Now, granted, he gets restored due to the star memory, or Haru Ellie's sacrifice, I guess. There's that. So yeah, so he ends up but for the most part, he's got like a satisfying journey of being just like a warrior that just wants to battle to like a man willing to sacrifice himself for his friends, which the times he does, he always gets revived in some ways, but she's 3 times really, but heck. And then there's also, you got two other mascot characters, Griffin, Kato, a sort of jelly thing that Haru and Ellie meet off-screen, I guess, who offers to be their sort of like transportation and give them like maps to geography. But he's a bit of a perv, particularly with like, it's particularly around Ellie, but yeah, which it's the other characters have to keep an eye on him and stuff. But it does contribute to the plot in small ways and that stuff, and even helps free some of the members when they're captured and stuff. And then there's like Ruby, the sort of like a penguin-like creature from a talking penguin from like the Mystic World thing that always says the term Pio, which might, depending on who you ask, might be an annoying mascot character who's super rich at first, but only wants to help good people, but is tricked by bad guys to giving them money at first. But then becomes a sort of financial supporter of Haru and of the Rave Warriors at first, though becomes broke at some point, but gains magic and becomes useful now and then, but is also sometimes a hindrance when he reveals the weaknesses of like his allies or information that enemies should not learn.
That's true.
But it does contribute, and he does end up becoming the owner of the casino again, which I guess goes to like Julia, who once being freed from her dragon form ends up, I suppose you could say, like the pre-Urza, though this is more halfway into the series, so she ends up taking on strong opponents, though. I guess you could say she's more the character Hiro doesn't mind showing a bit more fan service than with Ellie, I guess.
She's the more, say, wild type of character.
Yeah, which sometimes means that, she loses clothing in battle or takes off makes a bit more inappropriate dressing when you probably shouldn't have, but...
Although I'd say that adds to more of her charm and in the more comedic ways.
But it's not like in your face kind of thing.
No, of course not.
So you have that. So she ends up getting she ends up to contribute to fights, sometimes getting her butt kicked, but she ends up defeating one of the 4 demon lords in the end. So there's like that, and eventually she ends up joining Ruby's casino. And I suppose the last two are Bianca, who...
Belnica, yeah.
He had, like, apparently the only other girl that could use a Furion through Fear's experiments, but turns out she can't, and she was tricked into trying to summon Endless by this group called the Blue Guardians for their own goals. But eventually she has her own sort of ability of magic of avoiding and healing, and she ends up joining the Rave Warriors, and even sacrifices her life to help Julia defeat one of the Demon Lords, and supposedly dies, but gets brought back, which is a bit of an issue I do have, but heck.
I'd say this, Belnica, I don't know why, I kept getting reminded of Vivi. Not in the sense that she's a princess, but she could, like, Vivi could have been the character that joined the Straw Hats after Alabasta, and that's kind of how I view Belnica, is that she does join Haru and the gang at the very end.
Yeah, but I guess you could say she's also kind of like a prototype design for Levi for like Fairy Tail.
You could say that.
And last character, I suppose, that you could say is a major supporting character is Sigo Chaser, a member of the Time Mage that can use all elements and that stuff, who originally is on a mission to destroy, who infiltrates Demon Card within to destroy it, but also originally targets Ellie as, due to her powers of Furion, he thinks that she could destroy the world, given the Stargate, I think, was it?
Mm-hmm.
That it destroyed, like, the original 2 kingdoms, and also killing 2 million people, that Haru and Luca descended from.
Yeah.
However, as Haru and Ellie defy fate and all that stuff, and they are able to, and he forms a sort of friendship between the two. He becomes their ally, willing to protect them, even going against his entire people at one point.
I'd say this: out of all the, I mean, every supporting character in Rave Master is essential to the story. I'd argue Sieghart has the most important role out of all the supporting characters. I'd argue.
As he's the one that helps Ellie and Haru find out Ellie's past and all that stuff, and even saves them a few times, particularly against the Urasion 6.
Mm-hmm.
And all that stuff. And you can even argue he's like the strongest good guy character for a while, maybe, before Haru gets stronger. So yeah, he even goes against his own people at one point. But eventually, and once he helps Ellie and Haru find out Ellie's past with Risha Fountain. He eventually makes the sacrifice of taking them back to their present, but he must stay in the past to make sure things play out fully. And as a result, he stays in one place for 50 years, and it turns out there's a skeleton that was guarding Risha Valentine's grave for 50 years. And it turns out he ends up actually being one of the victims of the explosion, and his body's been guarding her all this time in order to reunite with her and stuff. And in many ways, it's sort of like the saddest death in the series.
Dude, no joke. The first time I read that part and I got to that specific scene, I remember sitting there and I was just like, "Holy shit!"
But yeah, I was kind of spoiled, I guess, when I guess someone showed someone showed a pic of Siegel's death. Though I'm assuming that he was incinerated, but no, it's you stay back in the past and end up dying.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think Stargate explosion. I think, but
I'd say this: it's not just one of the most emotional deaths in Rave Master. I'd say it's one of the most emotional deaths in anime and manga, just period.
yeah, it's granted, it's perhaps one that's not as well known since it was never really adapted to an anime.
Well, it was, but it never reached that point.
Okay, it was implied in the anime, but never really got to that revelation that it was him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
I know they showed the skeleton, but they never got to the revelation behind it. Yeah.
So out of Team Natsu and their friends and allies, in Fairy Tail and outside of Fairy Tail, and the Rave Warriors, I think I'll give it more to the Rave Warriors since they either play more integral parts of the story, at least have more ties to it, or you do actually see them struggling and winning and losing quite a bit, and also they're not really ass-pulls of how they win their fights. Though granted, I will say it is kind of annoying how some of them end up sacrificing themselves towards the end, but then get resurrected. But it's not as infuriating as what Fairy Tail did.
No. Like at least with Raven, when it came to the sacrifices in the final battle, at least there was a logical explanation as to how they were able to survive. It wasn't just like, oh, willpower, you know?
Yeah, but it's like, let's see, but yeah. So other than that, but I definitely say they got more better planned character arcs, more all that stuff, particularly like Jet, Mucusa, and all that stuff.
Musica.
And the Sergen and seeing that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And even the others who sort of came in late got roles to do towards the final arc as well. Though I do wish that the whole resurrection thing didn't happen with some of them, but yeah. But I definitely say they're much more better than with some of the stuff with Juvia, where she stabs herself to make sure, when Grey and her are forced to fight each other to death, she sacrifices her life so Grey doesn't die. But then, oh, she's alive! Or Wendy, I guess it implies that Wendy sort of tries to heal her or something like that. But either way, she's still alive, even though the chain says the ice chain does not come undone until someone is dead.
See, I think if in the final battle you had those casualties, and then at the very end you sort of reversed, if Hiro took the same approach he did from Rave Master into Fairy Tail when it came to those casualties, I don't think it'd be as bad, you know?
Yeah, but yeah, I definitely say that with that could have worked, I guess, but yeah, and there's also Gajo, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, but other than that, the Rave Warriors also do suffer some casualties, even if it's not allies within their main group. It can be former friends or people from their past that have died.
Yeah, like Haru's dad ends up dying. You lose Shiba. You lose characters from the past too. So
yeah, so they end up dying and all that stuff.
And then Reina and Seaguard being, I'd argue, the two biggest ones outside of Shiba.
Yeah. But yeah, Sega ends up dying, but yeah. Oh yeah, Shiba as well, I guess, is sort of like the Obi-Wan mentor, where he eventually fights Haru for the final trial and ends up dying as a result. Though ends up reuniting with Risha Valentine, though, when Ellie comes, and I think he realizes it's her, though it's never really confirmed, but I think most people said that he probably knew in the end. Let's see, because it's kind of interesting. Both Rave Masters ended up loving the same girl. But,
yeah.
so interest, but it's kind of weird like that, but yeah. But I'd definitely say the Rave Warriors are better handled and better developed than the Fairy Tail ones, which some of them had sort of ass pull moments in. And they sometimes really contribute to the plot, but I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to comment on, Lucky Chi.
Actually, no. I think you explained it pretty well. It's like you said, like the Rave Warriors that suffer more casualties, and you do see them grow. Whereas, yeah, you could argue Team Fairy Tail does grow, but it's not by a lot.
And I definitely said there's better explanations in how they defeat their opponents.
Agree.
3-0 to Rave Master and Fairy Tail behind.
Yep, 3-0 right now. And then we get to side characters. And side characters are characters like Shiba, Musica's grandfather, Nagisa, Rosa, Go, Cadley Heart's sister, and then Celia the Mermaid.
Oh yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. So, and if you wanna lump that in with Fairy Tail, think of characters like
guild members such as Makarov, Loxus, the Thunder Tribe, the Elfman, Mira Jane. Let's see, Lasana. I guess you could even other guilds such as Sabretooth. Let's see, Mermaid Heel. Let's see, Blue Pegasus and Llama Scale.
Llama Scale, yeah, like that's how I would say. And I'll say this: between the two, I'm just gonna say it right now. I'd give it to Team Rave. I mean, you could argue, yeah, like the side characters of Fairy Tail do get a bit more moments, sure, but I don't know.
Let's see. I think one of the advantages of like the side characters have from Rave Master is that even the minor ones, such as
like Nagisa,
let's see, Celia, Nagisa, Lazabin, Yuma. Some of them will either appear for one big arc, or they appear with them for a few multiple arcs as they journey with them, such as Lazabin, who appears in a few arcs. Originally as an enemy, but eventually becomes an ally.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So there's like that. So you kind of get stuff like that. Where you even get some of the side characters, actually even having them fights of their own. I think such as like the ones that from the Tower of Din, I think it is. That group that was pretending to be Clear Maltese, one of the 4 Knights of the Blue Sky.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're referring to. Let me double check. The Tower of Denark, right? Remy. It was Remy
and her brother
and Sharpener, yeah.
Yeah. And even like Sela, who they take part in some of the fights, even assisting like the main characters such as Mukasa and Ellie and all that stuff. And Nagisa ends up being the main, and ends up assisting, like being the connection between the Rave Warriors to Resistance, where she tries to assassinate one of the Iraqion 6, but ends taking the Rave Warriors to the Resistance.
And she ends up being, I was going to say, and she ends up being a potential love interest for Musica.
Yeah, though I think due to the age difference, I think that's probably what holds it back, really.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Led by Yuma Ansek, who's her father and stuff, so they end up contributing to the story and all that stuff, even if it's just for one arc. And then most of them return to the final arc. To like a...
And you could argue Fairy Tail does that too, but I think it's more satisfying, I'd say.
At least, yeah, with Rave Master, I suppose it's a bit more something like that, but yeah. There are certain characters that don't appear in the final arc, such as Celia the Mermaid.
I think the mermaids in general don't appear in the final arc. That was
Yeah,
kind of interesting.
I figured they were going to at least show up in some form, but yeah. And also the Big Butt Bandits, who more of like they're probably part of the only few chapters that I would probably argue are fillerish for Rave Master.
Oh yeah, the Jiggle Butt King.
They're sort of like the first of the jokey characters that you kind of get from like Hiro, such as like Ichiya from like Fairy, part of the Blue Pegasus. Well, all these handsome mage guilds, but he's the only one that's kind of like creepy, which everyone else gets freaked out whenever he appears.
You're right.
Or does his man transformation, particularly Urza. No, granted, I do know some people do not like this character, but yeah. So, and there's also like Lanzabu, who's sort of like an enemy but turns comedic ally, I guess. Though doesn't really contribute much to the fighting, but more just like a funny comedian for the while. But yeah, I definitely say that. Let's see, one thing about due to the fact that most of these characters, just for the one arc thing, they get their own small side arcs, and they get completed. One of the most interesting, I think the most interesting for me is the Nagisa Anset and the Yuma and the Resistance one, where it turns out that Resistance lead, Nagisa's father, is not actually the Resistance leader, but actually the enemy they've been fighting, the Blue Guardians. But due to the fact that she's been led to believe his father, he requests because the former leader was also once the best friend of the Resistance leader, but then turned evil after losing his original crew and his wife. It feels like due to the fact that he's raised as his father, it's probably best not to reveal this truth, as this might break her down, given what kind of man her father had become. Not to mention, the father technically ordered her to be tortured, so
there's that.
In many ways, I guess you could say it's kind of like a Darth Vader Leia thing.
You could say that.
At least what Leia felt towards Darth Vader after in the original Legends EU. But yeah, I definitely say they were probably the most engaging of the stories, though, followed by Celia, I guess, with like falling in love with Haru, but no, it can't be with her, though does sneak in a kiss on the cheek, much to Elia's jealousy.
That is amusing.
Anyway, to like the fairy tale ones, from the guild, you got like the Stratoman siblings, which mostly it's at first Mira and Elfman at first, because Lasana supposedly ended up being killed when, Elfman supposedly went with Berserk, and as a result, Mira changed from a sort of like bad girl to a sort of like nice girl, and no longer wanted to fight, instead becoming a sort of bikini model and receptionist for the fairy tale. Well, Elfman had to go, Elfman does have a sort of nice little sort of mini character arc of only transforming certain parts of his body to like monster forms until going fully to protect her sister, even though it was that transformation at first that supposedly lost the first one. But then occasionally forming a sort of romance with Evergreen, a member of the Thunder Tribe, and even willing to go, seemed like forced to betray his guild to protect his sisters. But is always able to make up for it and even help out the team, though never really gets the spotlight I feel like he probably should have gotten, but oh well. Let's see, but yeah, Mira Jane was originally the rival of Urza in a very similar manner to Natsu and Grey, but put that out beside when she lost her sister and just became a nice girl, though occasionally becomes a bit of a diva, I guess, if you will, the best way to describe it. See, and there's like all these minor guild mates that come up now and then, each having a role. They're just more of recurring characters you see now and then. Some stay along for the long run, and others disappear, particularly when the time skip happens, which is a 7-year one. But there's definitely ones that stick out more than others. Exactly, the gunslingers who eventually become a couple and have a daughter. Marco, who eventually becomes the 4th guild master when everyone disappears for 7 years. Stuff like those kind of characters. They each have their roles now and then in the story. And there's some touching moments, particularly when Natsu says that they're trying to win the Grand Magic Games for them for everything they had to endure for 7 years. So there's that. And there's Makarov, who's sort of like, I guess you could say, the mentor figure for the guild. I guess you could say he's a mix of like third Hokage, the Kakashi's, maybe the Jiraiya's and all that stuff. You know, the mentor figure for everyone. Who probably should have died at least 3 times, but always comes back. But I think the main one out of the fairy tale one is probably Luxus, an arrogant, ritzy mage who wants to inherit the Dirtsy guild, wants to inherit like the guild from his grandfather. So he's sort of like the closest thing fairy tale has to royalty, if you will. Given the fact that his great-grandfather was one of the founders, his grandfather's the 3rd master, so it's like he's likely to succeed. But due to the fact he doesn't really at first understand the bonds between the guilds, eventually, tries to take the guild by force, eventually being expelled like his father was, but eventually comes back to help them again in Tenno Island against the 2nd guild master, Fairy Tail, who led Grimoire Heart to being allowed back in due to Guild Arts being the 5th guild master just for like less than a day, but yeah. So here's like the best character arc amongst the side characters, where an arrogant snob to a member that just accepts Fairy Tail as his family, even when it's against his own father, or anyone that threatens his teammates, including the Thunder Tribe, who are loyal to him and still stay with the guild due to his orders and stuff, though never get the spotlight I think they should have. And I suppose there's also, I guess, Carla and Guild Arts, who Carla eventually it's more of just a side character who's kind of like just drunk all the time or all that stuff. But later we learn that she's actually the daughter of the most powerful mage in Fairy Tail with Guild Arts, who appears now and then, particularly in the later half of the series, to take on the really powerful warriors like Blue Note or, let's see, the strongest of the 4 heavenly sages of like mages of like the 10 wizard saints who went to the enemies and stuff. So there's like that. Who many says that is probably ripped off of Shanks, but yeah. But yeah, they're pretty fun to deal with. And then you have like Llama Scale, which were originally enemy, which they like part of Grey was like Grey's rival, an enemy at first, but then went part of a guild, and then appeared now and then, particularly against the Arashi on 6, the Grand Magic Games, and the final arc. Eventually helping Grey put aside the rivalry, moving on from Earl, even and all that stuff. You had like the Blue Pegasus that are mostly more of comedy, I guess, particularly Ichiya. And then you had Sabretooth, who became the strongest guild while the main mages disappeared for 7 years and are pretty arrogant, but due to the fights they have against Fairy Tail, they eventually learn the importance of friendships under the new leadership of Sting, who's also a Dragon Slayer, along with Rogue, who's also a Dragon Slayer. Though they're 3rd generation, where they're both raised by Dragon and have Dragon Llama inserted into them. So they have it's a small journey, so I definitely, and Mermaid Heel, which is mostly just the Grand Magic Games and the final arc, really, where one of Elsa's old friends, Minerva, joins, and it turns out the strongest member, Kagura, is actually the brother of Simon, who was killed by Jalal, so there's sort of like he wants to kill Jalal, but Elsa tries to fulfill that, her brother died because of her, so she tries to kill Elsa for a bit, but she ends up beating them and getting her to move past her hatred of Jalal a bit, though it's not until the final arc where she's able to do it by, saving Jalal as she takes down the image of her brother who was getting in the way of Jalal, defeating the bad guy due to his guilt. So yeah, there's all kind. I definitely say Fairy Tail due to its length, also has a lot more side characters, but most of them feel like a bit last minute since some of them came in to the post time skip and stuff. I definitely say the biggest problem with fairy tale is that some of them are sort of like late to the party, or let's see, don't really get. Let's see, most of them are like former enemies turned allies later, though. Don't get as much screen time as I suppose they should have, or at least they're not as essential, I guess. But I guess you could say Rave Master is just let's see, more of quality over quantity. So yeah, I definitely say Rave Master sort of gets the win here with the side characters, mostly just because I think, besides maybe a few from Rave Master, like the Jiggle Butt gang, who are just entirely filler, I definitely say the side characters in Rave Master appear when they need to. Let's see, appear when they need to, and even it's just like a single arc, and then appear for the final arc. Most of them appear for the final arc to help out against against all the sort of like evil Ritzy fodder minion characters and stuff. So I think there's a nice and most of them are all there for when let's see, Haru and Ellie get married. While with Fairy Tail, it's like, let's see, some of them are former enemies and then they turn allies later, but I think some of them look like they would lead up to more, but it's like they're mostly background characters. It's like you do feel like perhaps maybe it's more of like there's just too many characters in Fairy Tail towards the end of that point to get any real focus on. But yeah, I'd say Rave Master gets the win. So Lucky Tuna, I finished with my let's see, sort of description of side characters. So I feel like I'm probably missing a few out, both with Rave Master and Fairy Tail. Why don't you have a go of what you want to say, particularly on the Fairy Tail side characters?
I'll say this: the Fairy Tail side characters, they're neat. I can't say necessarily that a lot of them are super memorable per se. Essentially, like certain characters where like they're there, and then you're kind of like, do we need them there?
I'd say the most memorable is probably Luxus.
Luxus, maybe like characters like Mavis. Yeah, but I do think that in terms of side characters, and I think it goes back to what you said, it's very quality over quantity, where Fairy Tail you've got like a huge mass amount of side characters. Do all of them contribute to the overall plot? You could argue yes with the fairy sphere. You could argue that, but I don't know. I'd say on a personal scale, the side characters are a lot more impactful in Rave Master. So if we're looking at it like that, I definitely say characters like Shiba, Blacksmith Musica, Nagisa, Rosa, Go, Catlia, Celia, characters like that, I think supersede any of the side characters from Fairy Tail. So for me, it's another win for Rave Master. Which now gets us into the antagonists for both Fairy Tail and Rave Master. Which, funny enough, one of the antagonists shares a rather striking name resemblance. Because in Rave Master, you had the Eration 6 as an enemy faction, and in Fairy Tail, you had, okay, for one story arc, you could argue, but the Eration 6 as another group. But, Blue, why don't you go ahead and give us your thoughts?
Well, about the Eration 6 in both Fairy Tail and let's see, Eration Sage, or just antagonist groups in general?
Groups in general.
Well, throughout Fairy Tail, it's more of a film of the arc kind of thing. Let's see, it's like there isn't really any long-term villain groups, at least, though. I guess you could technically count the Bomb Alliance, where they're a group of dark guilds, three dark guilds at the top of the food chain, if you will.
You
Controlling all
could
the
say
minor
that,
dark guilds.
you could argue that, yeah, but I think what would have benefited, I think the disadvantage they have is that, like, you don't really kind of see how they're linked together, and I'm not saying, like, all the members should, like, have meetings and whatnot, but, like, just the respective leaders, like, you have Margir from Tartarus, you've got Hades from Gormar Hearts, and
Brains,
then,
Zero.
and then Zero from Horation says, and, like, they discuss how things are going. That's it.
But yeah, let's see. They're not really. They're just more of a. It's more of a pact and an alliance, but it's more of. Let's see, for Fairy Tail, it's more of individual villains that are more recurring. Like it was originally Jalal and then let's see, Ultir for like the first 200 chapters. Ultir longer with Hades in the background. It's not until like Zerf, it's properly introduced, and Agnologia, do you have like at least two, let's see, recurring bad guys?
I think Zeref was around chapter 200, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Granted, Zerf always had a presence, so
he has.
But I think I'll get more into that when we come to the individual big bads. But yeah. So as for the organizations, well, I definitely say I think Fairy Tail has. I think, let's see, I'll probably say this is probably just due to Hiro's art style involving at the time, but I definitely think Fairy Tail probably has a lot more recognizable, perhaps maybe more memorable designs and villains, at least.
Would you also argue that maybe they have more personality than some of the organization members?
Let's see, with like the Fairy Tail ones, yeah. Yeah, I'd say some of them do have quite a bit of personalities, though. Particularly, I think some of the more memorable ones, I think, for Fairy Tail would be the Element 4, which Juvia was a part of.
Oh, yeah.
And Phantom Lord, like, let's see, showing like the opposing, let's see, rival guild, that legal guild that's the strongest of like the like Fairy Tail and their main rivals. I definitely say, let's see, in many ways, I guess you could say the Element 4 is sort of like it's a more original group from Fairy Tail, though granted you could say it's probably loosely based off the Demon 4, the 4 Demon Lords, though.
You could argue that too.
Though granted, the 4 Demon Lords weren't really, let's see, as elemental as like the Element 4, but that's the closest thing, but it's very loosely. But in many ways, the Element 4 is sort of more original to Fairy Tail, really, compared to that. So I definitely say them. I definitely say the Grimoire Heart and even Tartarus and the 12 Springons, of Surf's Empire. I definitely say all those dark designs you'd probably recognize more than you probably would have, let's see, any from Rave Master, I'd probably say.
You could say that.
So I definitely say, I think the biggest problem with most Fairy Tail villains, particularly the later ones, is they're hyped to be the super powerful members, but they get easily beaten through like the power of friendship or something. I mean, some of them do gain victories, but it's just kind of like, let's see, but it's just like, it just kind of like gets, let's see, undone and stuff. I mean, granted, it's for like, I'd say let's see, Fairy Tail Horation 6, they all end up beating the guild members from like all the alliance of guild members when they have their first fights and then get defeated in the second round. And let's see, though, granted, some of them still end up winning fights afterwards, particularly Midnight. For the Horation 6 until he ends up against Urza. And then you also had like Brian or Zero defeat Natsu and his friends first before Natsu defeats him with the aid of Jalal awakening the Dragon Force within him. So there's that. But most of these bad guys just don't recur much, and let's see, these organizations are kind of, let's see, these organizations are kind of, let's see, 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 just like I said, villain of the arc, and I definitely say that while some of them are probably a bit more memorable personality, I do think most of them just disappear quite quickly, and
They
you
do.
don't see them again unless they're either reformed or being resurrected, like in the final arc. Because one of the Spring Gun 12,
It's Nineheart. Nineheart's the one that's able to bring
let's
him
see,
back.
yeah, who has the memory thing that brings back some of the villains that kind of stayed villains, like Sandcrow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most of the villains, if they continue on to a future arc, they usually means they're reformed. But yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So but I definitely say for Rave Master, you have a recurring villain organization within Demon Card who
And you could argue, they're like the central thread throughout the entire story.
yeah, from beginning to end, let's see, sort of like that. So and they're the main users of the Darkbring, these dark orbs of power that power up magic, but it gives them powerful magic, but also corrupts a person. So there's that. So you end up fighting various bits and pieces of the organization, such as like the 5 guards, who are like, let's see, granted, most of the villains are also one-time villains, and depending on how memorable they are, it depends. Though I think the Irashion 6 are probably the most memorable of the lot, such as like Shura, who later becomes an ally.
Yeah, you get Shura.
Because I don't think we mentioned him in the side characters, though eventually he becomes Haru's older sister's lover, much to Haru's displeasure.
That's actually pretty funny too. No, but yeah, like you've got Shura, you've got Reina. Reina was there too. Jigen was another character too that was there, and then Haja was. Haja's actually a pretty cool character because that he was essentially Sieghart's antagonist.
And there's that, let's see, ice dancing one, I think.
Deep Snow, I think is her name.
Deep Snow. And I think there was also this one that was part of the Imperial Army that was originally fighting the Dark Continent, but then got wiped out.
Oh, yeah.
Who ended up replacing Shura. But yeah, I definitely find Shura dating Haru's sister quite amusing, especially when they... Okay, it seems to imply that they might have... Let's just say got physical.
They mingled. that's the looser terms I'll say. They mingled.
Yeah, though granted, it's a bit interesting to see how Gale was responding, since Shura was sort of like a sort of rival to him, but it's like, you're dating my daughter. But yeah, Gale ended up dying. But yeah. So yeah, so there's that. Let's see. Granted, the Irashian Sage. Let's see. They don't disappear for one arc. They actually appear for multiple arcs. Well, the same does happen for Irashion Sage for Fairy Tail, but
they're not like a threat after the initial arc. Yeah,
anti-heroes later, I guess, and some of them even reform, and they even join Jalal's like crime sorcerer thing. So there's that, and they all get pardoned, but they didn't really contribute much in the final arc, and most of them got beaten by August just to hype them up and stuff. So yeah, so there's Demon Card, the Irashion 6. Most of them have like either personal beefs with some of the main characters, particularly
like Shura had one initially with Haru, and Reina was more so with Musica technically, but you could argue also
father created the Silver Ray, but she wanted to preserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had I guess Deep Snow was sort of antagonistic to Ellie.
In a sense.
He did fight her, and she did fight her, but lost and all that stuff.
Oh no! I think you're you're referring to I think it's Jiro. Jiro's the one. Mm-hmm. That's the one you're referring to.
Oh yeah, Jiro. Yeah, sorry. Deep Snow, I think, was the other one. Let's see, that was the replacement of Shura. So yeah, so it was Jiro that had the thing with Ellie, and then you had Jagan against Let, who was jealous of Let's relationship with Juliet, so turned a dragon and all the other dragon people, and then just led them to cause havoc in the normal world.
I definitely say the villains in Rave Master were definitely more personal when it came to the organizations, which you technically had initially with and it's more so individual arcs.
Yeah, I mean, particularly the arcs of Grey and Urza, where the villains were like had some connection to him. With like, Grey was his rival, if he during Terror Tillage of Ul, and Urza was Jalal and her friends and her former friends at the tower at first before they learned the truth.
And you could argue it's repetitive because that kind of became a formulaic thing for each new antagonist. The guard, so this is the threat for Natsu, this is the threat for Lucy, etc., etc., etc. You know?
Yeah. So yeah, but and let's see. There's also other organizations within it's outside of Demon Card, such as like the Orgs who kidnap the mermaids.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of like demon guys. I'm trying to remember. That's the dude that had a pumpkin head.
Yeah.
Luca.
I think you're referring to no, that's not Girko. Girko was the other one.
The one the group that manipulated Pyro for his money at first. Omegami. There's the Omegami, and then there's the Doya Ghost Attack Squad, I believe. So let's see, and then there's Blue Guardian, like some of the rival gritty dark organizations against Demon Card. Though eventually they tried to make a way to the top, particularly when the original leader of Demon Card was destroyed. And then there's like the 4 Demon Lords.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I definitely say, let's see. Now, on one hand, I'm probably more inclined to say that the organizations of like Demon Card, Blue Guardians, Omegami, and Dorgos, either long term or short term, I definitely say were better handled. Though
they were.
I will say that there are some certain individuals within like the organizations with like Fairy Tail, I think, stand out as well.
Yeah, so you could kind of argue that it's kind of a tie.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a tie because there's like individuals like Hades, who was like the second master of Fairy Tail, so there's sort of like a personal conflict, and he even beats Makarov to like hype up. And there's like some of the members of Gilmore Heart that actually beat the Fairy Tail Wizards for being beaten themselves. And there are definitely some personal ones like a Silver Gray's father, Silver. For like the 9 demons of like thing, and there's definitely like quite a few of the 12 spring guns that are quite memorable, even if they lose.
Yeah, like you got characters like Envil, and then you had Brandish. I actually did like August. August was pretty cool.
Yeah, though most of the problems with them is that the way they were beaten.
It's how they were defeated. Although
I think if it's possible,
given Brandish's character, I guess it was kind of comedic, yeah.
Yeah, granted, there are some in the Orankyo Sage that never get defeated by the main characters, such as Reina, who eventually falls in love with Mikasa and sacrifices herself to destroy the Silver Ray, even though it's a...
Which, if you compare her sacrifice to...
Juvia and Grey?
Yeah, like if you compare both of the images, like it's not the same, but there's you could see Hiro drew some similarities between that and incorporating that into Fairy Tail.
So I definitely say there's like that, and there's also Sylvia. I mean, at least the Ellie sort of rival. He doesn't get defeated in the normal sense. I mean,
no, he doesn't.
I mean, he just accepts defeat there when Elliot performs a much better dance than her, and he forfeits the thing.
It's a unique way of defeating your antagonist. I'll say that. It's
he eventually becomes an ally to like but I don't know. I guess it feels like he never really got his spotlight. I guess you could say.
No.
I definitely say the most satisfying defeat amongst the Oranki, and let's just say let's see. As for the other demon card, let me just.
Are you referring to the rival?
No, I'm trying to think of. Let me just. Let's see. Okay, Julius Rayfield. Jingen. I'd say Jurgen was probably the most satisfying one to be defeated against Let.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see, and then I guess you could argue Haiji due to the fact that he was like, the rival for Joe and all that stuff, and when Hugh manipulated granted Sig and Hearts. Friends. All his people to go get to destroy Ellie and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he had his own motivations. In fact, he was only using Demon Card for his own ends, even though he appeared to be the most loyal at first. I guess you could say Deep Snow was kind of like a filler-in member, really, because, well...
It kind of just felt that way.
Yeah, it was just probably temporary, but then got,
Yeah.
He ended up being defeated by his predecessor, though. He does have a sort of sympathetic thing of, he saw King as his father, but felt like he never loved him, but then was told that he did love him, but afterwards, and saw him as, his second son, and ends up crying, but you don't see him again afterwards. I'm trying to think, who else? Okay, there was Reina, Jagan, Haiji, I talked about that. Oh, yeah. The last member is Brella, who, it's more of a demon or bug thing, but this gets easily dispatched by her in their rematch. He feels kind of like just more of just a demonstration of how strong Haro had become after his final trial, really.
Oh, yeah. Which I thought was pretty satisfying. I was like, okay.
So there's that. There's another member of Demon Card I just kind of want to talk about before getting to the other organizations. Branch, apparently Haru's sister's ex-boyfriend, who was...
I'm not gonna lie, his send off was kind of sad. It wasn't. I'm not gonna say it was emotional, but I was like, dang, I felt bad for him.
But yeah, it's you learn he's the jerk of a boyfriend that she had that Haru beat up.
No, and here's what I love about that is that it was such a throwaway line that Hiro didn't even have to bring back into the story, and he brought it back, and I was like, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, it's everyone's like, wait, Haru knows this person? Oh, it's the boyfriend and all that stuff. It's okay, and you even have Judah I cut this dude to pieces for making.
Yeah, Shishuda was like, "You heard Cadley again."
Yeah, and further jokes of relax, Haru, just focus on your future brother-in-law. It's he's not happy about that either, and you can tell that his way of treating women has not changed. As he has Nakasa as a partner, but doesn't really. But she's only using him to try and assassinate Julius.
Mm-hmm.
The snow dude.
Yeah.
So it's like that, and then when he finds out Haru's the Rave Master and stuff, he ends up taking revenge on the girl, on Nikasa by pretending that she's Elia. But the Blue Guardians figure it out and then force him to torture her. And it's this point, he's and he's pathetic about it, but he's at this point, due to what he's done to her, it's this is unforgivable. You tortured you tortured a teenage girl, dude. And you haven't even the other characters beat him up for it. But then the surprising twist is that the Blue Guardians end up turning him into a cyborg and forcing him to fight against his will, particularly against Haru. He's begging Haru, please kill me. I don't want to live like this. And you kind of, at this point, you've ended up hating this guy, but now you're starting to feel sort of pity for him, I guess.
It's kind of like with Envy from Fullmetal Alchemist.
Mm-hmm. In a sense, yeah.
At least that's what I feel like it is.
Yeah, it's no, granted, it's the Envy. It's more Envy's more of what Roy was doing to him rather than what the villains are doing to Branch.
That's true. That's true.
Granted, it seems Branch might be an earlier design thing from that professor from Eden Zero. That one of the four. Let's see. You might know the one.
Yeah, the computer geek who was causing mayhem in
I guess that is one, but he also reminds me of the professor that tricked one of the four.
Are you talking about Mueller?
Yeah, the one that destroyed robots.
Yeah, the one who messed with Hermit. Yeah,
particularly Branch's robotic design, really.
I can see that.
So yeah, eventually we end up also learning a little bit of his backstory. After being beaten up by Hiro, he was mocked by the rest of the villagers. but like he got beat by a kid, so everyone mocked him and stuff. He felt like he had no choice but to eventually join Demon Crowd in order to be a somebody. He eventually, surprisingly enough, he became a captain. But I think he ends up realizing just how much of a bad jerk he is, and at least warns Ho that there's a bomb which allows him to alert the resistance to escape. But it turns out that he is the bomb. It's like, and just in the final moments, he realized that he wished he could have tried and been Ho's friend earlier. And this exploding. Well, you could say what he did is a bit unforgivable, but you do kind of feel pity for the guy as well.
It's kind of sad if you think about it.
So, yeah, there's also like some other, like, I said that Rave Master definitely has a few more of the sympathetic villains, I'd say.
Oh, for sure, and that's kind of where it goes into my point of you could argue that it's more of a tie between Rave and Fairy Tail.
Yeah. I mean, granted, you do have your general evil ones, such as Orc, who ends up being killed by Mucus and Sylvia.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones I'm thinking about is Doya, who's clearly evil, and like particularly wants to destroy humans and all that stuff. But yeah, it comes from like his past and when he originally founded a city and tried to bring both his people from Sycanoids, what Let and the other dragon race are, just anything that's non-human is, and humans to live together in this one village. But due to an incident when one of the monster-like children, due to his cause, ends up hurting one of the human kids, it starts rows between the two communities, and eventually all the Sycanoids leave, but Doya stays behind because he founded the city and it was mayor, but the human citizens treat him like crap, including like a little kid he met who was friendly to him at first. Eventually they lock him in a sort of prison thing and replace him as mayor with a human mayor. And eventually he gets chosen by a Darkbrain and it escapes, and while it may or may not be implied, his base is the former town that he once run, so it makes you wonder what happened to the human citizens there. Did he kill them or not? I mean, he definitely would have the mindset. So he'd probably want to destroy them and stuff, but you kind of feel sorry for him, but you realize that this guy is far too gone and must be stopped, and Hiro does defeat him. And then there's Blue Guardian, which some of these lot are definitely scumbags, particularly manipulating Blanka and thinking that they're trying to world peace when they're actually trying to destroy the world. But one of the ones that I think is really evil is Cola, who turns Branch into a cyborg. But I'll go into Hardner, who's sort of like a scumbag and wants to destroy the world and stuff, merge with Endless and stuff. But you realize he wants to erase the past, mostly because of what happened to his original crew, his wife, and his child. But it turns out I think it's Nagisa or something.
Nagisa, yeah.
Is his daughter, though. At first you think that he ends up being killed by Luca before he realizes, oh no, he's still alive, but he realizes he can't see it's best that he doesn't see his daughter or she learns the truth. So he accepts that and he goes off somewhere, but yeah. And then you have the Demon Four, who are like the ultimate bad guys for like your main characters to face, with some of them even having to sacrifice their lives.
Which was pretty emotional, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. I mean, they're not really got much personality, but
you could argue they're more like obstacles, but
yeah. But I definitely say that they were probably, for the most part, satisfying. But yeah, even though I think originally I was going to give the villain I definitely say there are certain individual characters in Rave Master and even and I definitely think the organizations were better than
Fairy Tail.
But I definitely think there's a lot more iconic villains of Fairy Tail, even the ones that get poorly defeated due to some of the characters they have. Mm-hmm. Particularly like August, who turns out to be the son of Seth and Mavis, but neither of them know, and it's very interesting and all that stuff like that.
It is.
So yeah, I think I'll give this a draw.
I would honestly have to give it a draw too, because like it's like you said, there are two aspects to it, and like you get the personal side with Rave, and then you get the more interesting designs and little quirks with the Fairy Tail of villains. So I definitely give it a draw there. as well. So it's been what? Actually, no, this is the first draw, technically.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. I think we give Rave Master 4 wins.
Yeah.
At this point.
It only makes sense. But
yeah. But who knows? But let's see. But I think the next topic, I might just give Fairy Tail a win on this. But what's the next topic again?
now we've got the main antagonists, which for Rave Master, surprisingly, there's also two. You've got King Rare Groove, also known as Gale, and he's only up to Volume 9. And then your central main antagonist for Rave Master, who is Lucia Rare Groove. And for Fairy Tail, you've got Agnologia and Zeref, both of which you technically don't get until Tenro Island, so...
It takes a lot longer for Hiro to introduce them, technically. Though Zeref has always been a presence within the series.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
In many ways, you could even argue that, well, granted, Zeref feels like the one that's been more built up to compared to Agnologia.
For sure.
It's Zeref definitely first was mentioned in Lullaby for creating the demon, and then Drelolio, and then the Tower of Heaven, and then you get this hint by Uta that he's still alive.
Oh yeah, like Zeref, you at least get an idea of okay, there's been a lot of talks about him, so it makes sense that you gradually build up to it.
Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a build up to Zeref, and granted, you think you're under the impression that he's this evil mage with no goodness in his heart and stuff. And when you first introduced him, well, granted, he's a mysterious boy, though granted, I think Hiro said he wasn't going to originally be Zeref to begin with, but eventually he decided to make him Zeref.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, here's an interesting fact about Haru's sister I forgot to mention earlier, is apparently she was originally supposed to be Haru's uncle, but Hiro said
I do remember that.
Female character in the first volume, so...
Yep.
Yeah, it would be kind of tacky or something like that, but anyway, so Zeref we're properly introduced to him. He seems to be the sad boy who wants to be around people, but can't because if they do, they die due to his curse. And then, let's see, we learn that he is Zeref, and it's like, he's not really what people expected.
And you see exactly how that's... You see exactly what happened, both in his flashback and during Mavis's flashback, too. So you see pretty well how his curse has affected people.
But when Natsu first meets him, we learn that he has some connection to Natsu that
but we don't know what it was. It was
and that he expects Natsu to be the one to end him or something. And then he appears now again. Punishing those who have brought reckless and chaos and destruction, such as Gilmore Heart, by killing Hades. So eventually, he's showing them more. Although on one hand, he's like, okay, taking down evil, but at the same time, he's showing a sinister side, and it looks like, okay, while Zeref, this is like the first signs of Zeref's more nasty nature. And then it seems you finally, when we see him again after the Grand Magic Games talking to Mavis, he decides that after all these years, he's finally going to just wipe out all of humanity. So it's clear that Zeref is going to become like the final bad guy, or at least implied one of the final bad guys besides Agnologia. And then we see him again during Tartarus, where he retrieves the Book of End, though he doesn't meet Natsu at least once before, and then killing his former creation with Margia. It was revealed that Natsu is the Book of End, and then in the Avatar arc, we learn that
he's Natsu's brother, which and I still remember when that chapter came out, because when I read that chapter, I was like, oh my god, because all the pieces were starting to come together. I was like,
it's like why he's so emotional around Natsu, why and all that stuff. And we learned that all of the creations he's done, the time travel and all that stuff, and the Tower of Heaven.
The Eclipse Project, the Tower of Heaven, the demons, all of that was just for him to die.
The Tower of Heaven and the Eclipse games were all attempts to try and bring back his brother, who had died from a dragon attack. Let's see, because only his body was intact while their parents were incinerated. But yeah, due to the attempts of trying to bring back the dead, he was cursed by the god Iluka or something.
No, the god of Ungsarim, which I
See,
don't know if we're gonna get that in 100-Year Quest, but
I don't know. But one thing is clear that the more Zerf cares for life, the more he takes. But the more he doesn't, the more the power is controlled. But at the same time, he's still taking life either way.
Oh yeah.
So he's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So he then creates demons in all attempts to try and kill him, including the ones that have caused the members of Fairy Tail so much trouble. And then even teams up with Igneal, the dragons, and Lucy's ancestors and all that stuff to try and move the dragon sayers, but afforded time to defeat Agnologia and maybe for Natsu to kill him. But during the 400 years, he's seen human nature and all that stuff and becomes corrupted that he now wants to destroy the world and all that stuff. He's planning this final war against Agnologia and the mages of Fairy Tail. And then we learn his plan is to go back in time to kill Agnologia before he becomes too powerful. Because if only him and Mavis will be left, and he doesn't want to be forever tortured by Agnologia. He even has a nice romance with Mavis, if you will. Natsu eventually defeats him, and then he is spared. While for Agnologia, he's more of a force of nature.
Essentially, yeah.
Let's see, at first we learn that this is mysterious. We alluded to him when Gildarts first appears, and he says, I met a dragon, a black dragon, and he nearly killed me. And when we see him in Tenno Island, he definitely lives up to his, ritzy power, because none of the Fairy Tail mages could do anything against him, and they would have died if not for Mathis' ghost using Fairy Spear to defend them. So, yeah. And then we learned in the Magic Games that he was originally a dragon slayer that turned into a dragon by bathing in dragon's blood, and probably wants to destroy the world, though he's waiting for the perfect challenge. Eventually he comes to Tartarus to try and defeat End, but then fights Igneal and wins against him. Now for the talking for the first time. And then we see his human form in the Avatar arc, and then he goes to cause chaos in the final arc before being defeated by Natsu.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. In many ways, I suppose you could say Agnologia might be loosely based off of Endless, the entity that eventually merged with Luca.
With Lucia, yeah.
Lucia. Now, for King, he was sort of the original powerhouse, the rival of Gale Glory, so he doesn't have much deep... granted, does get personal connection with Haru, but he's more of
his more personal connection to Haru is from Gale Glory, his dad.
Yeah, and he also killed her mother. Originally, starting a good detention with Demon Card. Originally, it was going to be Demon Guard to try and take on evildoers, but eventually, he ended up doing more dirty deeds as soon as his organization grew bigger, which resulted in Gale leaving. Then coming back when he heard about his actions, tried to turn him into the Imperial Army, but mistaken their intentions of wiping him out, supposedly killing his wife and son. Turning him into a darker person, and then killing, Haru's wife, because she was there at the time looking for Gale. So
you mean Haru's mother?
Yeah, and ends up leading Demon Card before fighting Gale and Haru. With Haru, trying mending their friendship, he eventually sacrifices himself to try and destroy Demon Card, which he created, and dies. So you don't really get to see much of King. He's more of I guess you could say if Rave Master was divided into two parts, you could call him a part one antagonist, maybe?
I'd compare him to Orochimaru, where Orochimaru was super central in part one, and then part two was in King's defense, he did die after the first part.
And he didn't come back and all that stuff, but yeah. And then Lucia became the main bad guy, appearing now and then. I'd say definitely probably a bit more than, sometimes there's a Zerf. And he's clearly evil after being locked away for 10 years, finally breaking out. And even there's a bit of a not cool moment when he forcibly kisses Ellie.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, he seems to have an infatuation with her due to the fact she's the host of Epherion. So he wants her, particularly to be his bride in his long-term goal, but yeah. But he doesn't. But eventually revives Demon Card as its new king and stuff. But but as the time goes on, Urash himself fall one by one. He finds them a bit useless, and even the members of Demon Cards not be much. And not to mention having a few fights with Hiro. Granted, beating him a few times, but also losing a few times as well. Eventually he merges with Endless, and then no longer needs the lower grunts of Demon Card, and even kills his secretary, I think. And teams up with the 4 Demon Lords. And wants to use the power of Endless to destroy the world, as it's a parallel world, because the world was originally destroyed, but the last survivor went back in time, and it was his female ancestor. But due to the result, the members of his family have been cursed, so now he wants to destroy this world and go to the original one to be free. And he wants Ellie as his bride to repopulate the planet, though eventually Endless tells her to destroy her because she's a threat. So he just accepts that he will be just a god alone on the planet, on the dead world. But eventually he's defeated by Hiro. In many ways, you could argue that Luca and maybe King to an extent had more satisfying defeat and, perhaps pretty good at being bad antagonists. But I definitely say, I think Zeref, character-wise, is definitely better.
I'd say that.
I think, one of the most engaging thing about Fairy Tail, particularly the later half, was the characters, the lore behind it and all that stuff. Granted, perhaps it wasn't planned, but it was very neatly tied in.
Yeah, I'd say this, it's more of a tie for me. Like, if we're comparing Zeref to Lucia, I'd say Zeref kind of... See, I don't even think that's fair, because Lucia's backstory, I do really like. And I think it makes sense with him doing the... I think I know what the problem is. I think Lucia, up until that point, didn't have a lot of sympathetic qualities to him. And I think if that was shown more, I think it would have been stronger. So, I'd say this. I'd say Lucia compared to Zeref, character-wise. Maybe not as strong, but pretty strong. But overall importance to the story and what it meant for Haru and how Haru grew and the aftermath of that, I think supersedes Zeref in that sense. Because that's the other thing you gotta take into account is, we know Zeref's connection to Natsu, but we know that didn't really do much for,
not his character.
Yeah. And that's always an important thing in storytelling. I always keep in mind. It's all right, what's the personal grudge with the main antagonist? And what does the main protagonist take away from that? And we know what Lucia did to Haru as a protagonist. But Zeref to Natsu, especially with the aftermath, that's not much.
I'd definitely say the build-up with Zeref was much better, I'd definitely say.
For sure, yeah.
And as I also think granted, Agnologia his defeat was also sort of rushed and all that stuff and a bit unsatisfying. But I do think, as a destructive force of nature, I think he was pretty good. And I think design-wise, he's a lot more memorable than Endless, who's like the sort of white demon-like thing.
Yeah. So
Agnologia is a bit more of a black dragon that's very intimidating and even shown to be a lot more destructive, and even killed Igneo, so there's that. So
I think I'll give it a slight edge to Rave Master, just slightly.
For me, I think I'll give it to Fairy Tail, because I think Fairy Tail needs a win in some ways, but I definitely say that I think Zeref is just a more engaging antagonist, and Agnologia is a more fun antagonist of destruction. Granted, they were not defeated well in the end, but I definitely say they're probably more memorable and iconic in a sense. With Hero's 2 works, at least.
That's fair.
Yeah. So I think
you got one win for Rave Master for the main antagonist on my end, and then you get another win for Blue's end.
Yeah. In many ways, it's too bad 4 Life couldn't come here, because it could have been the tiebreaker. I don't know. We just probably have to. If you ever do another Rave Master podcast, you probably have to bring him back and stuff and see where he stands on that.
Probably. But yeah, I think that's the first time that's happened for you and me, because so far, usually we're in agreement, and this time it's sort of opposites. Sort of.
Yeah. I'm pretty certain that I think you've definitely disagreed with 4 Life, and I've disagreed with 4 Life once, but not by each other, but yeah.
Yeah. So now, jumping off from the main antagonist, which, like, again, for me, Rave Master is above Fairy Tail in that category, and for Blue, it's Fairy Tail. So,
yeah. So Rave Master has 4 wins, and let's see, there's 2 draws.
Mm-hmm. So now,
let's see if Fairy Tail could still get a win out of it.
So now, let's get to the best arc from both series. And I'll say this, for Fairy Tail, easy. Tartarus. For me, Tartarus is the best arc in Fairy Tail. Rave Master's tough, because there are a lot of good arcs in Rave Master, and I couldn't really decide what to pick. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
For me, I think it's Tenryl Island.
For Fairy Tail?
Yeah.
Okay. What about for Rave Master?
Okay, I'm just taking a look at the story arcs again for Rave Master, and I'm thinking of choosing between Mermaid Pearl and Blue Guardian's arc, and maybe it's the Truth of Ellie arc. I might have put the Final Battle arc, though. Granted, I might have done the Final Battle arc as well, but I do think that some of the characters coming back towards the end kind of negates it a little bit, but still pretty good, satisfying arc a bit. I think I'll go with Blue Guardian's arc just for the moment.
Blue Guardians? Okay. I think for me, and I think it's for what it sets up. I would say the Mystery of Ellie arc would probably be the best arc.
Okay.
If not that arc, definitely the Truth of Ellie arc, and perhaps for me the Final Battle arc. Let's go with the Final Battle. I'll pick that one. So the Final Battle arc for me will be the best arc in Rave Master. And if I had to pick between the two, I'd probably say the Final Battle arc over Tartarus. Because it's the final arc of the series, and you see like how everything comes together by the very end, and like you see the character journeys, you see where everything is, and then you get the final battle. There's the conclusion, which we'll get into later, but I think I would say the final battle arc is probably the best arc out of the two. Tartarus, and like I said, Tartarus is a really, really good arc, but the problem with Tartarus is all the payoff that follows through after that arc.
Now it has some frustrating moments in it, such as Afro Happy.
Yeah, there's that too. So
I think that ended up being, for me, worse than the Pearl and the Sasuke Snake Escape.
Yeah, but yeah, like I definitely say for that, the final battle arc takes the win there. What about you?
Our Island arc was the first ongoing manga arc I've read, though granted, the first one I read was the Eldos arc, but that was fully completed at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely say that I definitely found, anyways, Tenor Island arc probably was, well, granted, there was also signs of Fairy Tail starting to get some of its problems, such as Elsa's OP moments and a bit more fan service coming in and all that stuff. I definitely say that I definitely say that it's got quite a lot of things going for it, such as I think it's the last time villains of Fairy Tail were kind of truly threatening into like the 100-year quest again. Because like when it was originally like a sort of like an exam arc for like the S-class trials thing. You start to get a bit of a glimpse of like focus on more of the main characters and main side characters such as Gaudio and Levy, Juvia, Carla, and all that stuff. All competing for like an S-class thing, particularly with Carla, why she wants to become an S-class mage, which eventually revealed that she's Gerart's daughter. And you get a touching moment between those two at the end of the arc. And But I definitely say the villains are one thing, because like when you first see the villains, some of them even defeat like the members of like Fairy Tail, particularly Hades against Makarov. That dude with the glasses that could imagine creatures defeats Elfman and stuff. So they end up winning, and then Fairy Tail struggles to beat them, and it's mostly but it's by teamwork that they eventually do, particularly against Hades. And then there's Agnologia. Just as they won, comes in and nearly destroys them, if not for Malthus. Well, I suppose, like, for me, I guess I like the Blue Guardians arc because you're starting to get more of, like, the characters and all that stuff. More of the hints of Ellie's past with, like, Ritzy Risha. And you've both got villains that are both despicable and sympathetic and all that stuff. And they live up for most of the hype, and it's quite believable, particularly against Hardner, with how he defeats Haru at first, and then and then later gets beaten by Haru. And the explanations are well done and all that stuff, and how they won the fights and stuff. So, yeah, I'd say I'll probably give Rave Master just a slight win, just because it's a pretty good arc. So,
okay. So Rave Master takes the win for best arc.
Yeah, it's 5th win.
Mm-hmm. Now that brings us over to the worst arc again. Fairy Tail, there's 2. There's Grand Magic Games, and then there's the Alvarez arc. I think Alvarez for probably the worst arc.
I have no idea what is the worst arc for Rave Master, because they're all pretty good, actually.
That's my problem. Yeah. Maybe the intro arc, and it's not to say that it's a bad arc, because it's just a simple introduction to all the characters, or at least to Haru and Ellie. But if that's the worst arc, I think that's fine, because even then, like,
it's just starting the series up, so yeah. Well, let's see, the Alvarez arc is the final arc, and it's supposed to be the big moment, but what it hypes up, well, it's definitely got some hyped up bad guys. Most of them end up being defeated rather lacklusterly, and even there's some ass pulls with how some of the characters survive.
Yeah, so well, when I say the intro arc is the worst arc in Rave Master, guys, I'm not saying it's a bad arc. It's actually a really good arc, but again, it's just a setup for the story that's to come. So I think, in that sense, I'd give it to Rave.
I think I'll probably do the same. Granted, if you did like the Jigglebots as their own separate filler one-shot chapters, I might just say that they're completely pointless while entertaining and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
But long run, they don't really matter much into a long story, and it just seemed like Hiro trying to pad filler in the times. So there's that. But yeah, I think I'd say that maybe the Dancing Thunder arc, which doesn't really do much, I think, in the long terms of things. I mean, it's just Haru and Ellie stopping a village from
Rain. Yeah, you could say that too.
It's kind of pointless, though. I think there's some nice moments in it, but yeah. But I think just due to the fact that Fairy Tail arc's a bit more frustrating, I'd definitely say Rave Master for its 6th win.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are some pretty interesting viewpoints when it comes to worst arc and the best arc for both these series, Rave Master and Fairy Tail, respectively. But now let's get to the endings of both these series. Personally, for me, I think the Rave Master ending is a lot stronger because everything comes together by the very end of the story. Every plot... Okay, I don't know if I can say every plot point, but let's say 99.9% of the plot points that were addressed in the beginning of Rave Master gets addressed towards the very end of it. And it doesn't leave you with an idea of, okay, there's going to be another part of the story. It actually feels like it's a solid, natural conclusion where you've seen Haru's journey, you've seen Ellie's journey, you've seen the side characters, you've seen the supporting cast, seeing where they came from in the beginning, and how their stories overall kind of, wrapped up in a nice little bow. And especially when you throw the epilogue scene into at the very end, which, yeah, you could argue Volume 17 kind of did spoil. But putting that to the side, you have those 2 little pages, and it's not a matter of like, all right, here's an epilogue, here's the kid, because unlike most mangas, especially like some of the modern mangas that we've seen today, like very least, let's say past 7 years, it's not a matter of, okay, the main story's done, here's an epilogue, here are the kids, because Hiro did something I thought was kind of interesting, which is that he introduced Levin way, way early on, like as early as Volume 1, as like these little special bonus chapters. Towards the very end, and they're not even that long. They're like maybe like a couple.
In many ways, you could argue that Ellie's son appeared before even Ellie did.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you count the silhouette of Ellie at the end of the first volume as an appearance of Ellie, but who knows?
Oh, but I guess that depends. But no, like I'd argue that as far as the Levin side story goes, like he's technically been there since the beginning. So I just thought that was actually a nice little treat. It's like, oh, okay, so that's Haru and Ellie's son. Again, you would have gotten that by Volume 17, but getting that little scene at the end, I actually thought was very touching and very comedic. I mean, again, that one's like kind of, if I had to describe it a certain way, the ending of Rave Master I would describe as a cake. It's like a nice marble cake. It's got the chocolate frosting over it or vanilla frosting, whatever preference you guys want to prefer. And then the last 2 special pages to Levin are kind of like sprinkles, if you will. That's how I would describe the 2 pages that we got. The fairy tale ending, I'll say this. I know some people are gonna say it's absolute horrendous. It should burn in hell, but I don't think the ending, the fairy tale, and that's where I'm going to start. Okay, if you look at the actual ending of fairy tale in isolation, I don't think it's that bad. You could argue it's kind of fitting for the series that it's kind of meant to be, but the problem with the ending, I think, lies with how we get to the ending. That's where my issue stands with the fairy tale ending, is that the actual ending itself is good, and it's kind of open ended as to, okay, you finish with the main story, and now here's going to be another story that's kind of like set in stone for the future, which I have nothing against, because open ending stories are fine. It just really depends on the execution of how you leave the door open. It's like, okay, you finish everything off, but here's this one little teeny tiny Easter egg to where, okay, if you want to continue the story, you could do that. Now, again, the final arc of Fairy Tail, the first half of it I thought was fine. The second Universe 1 hit, I think, really kind of makes the series go down in a bigger nosedive than even, I'd argue, the Grand Magic Games. So there's that. But I mean, as far as like character arcs go and everything, like the actual like ending to Fairy Tail isn't bad. Like I said, it's just how we get to that ending is where my big issue stems there. And based on that, I'm gonna give it to Rave Master. But Blue, what's your take on both the Rave Master ending and the Fairy Tail ending?
Well, Fairy Tail is more of an open-end thing where it's like it's finished and let's see and all that stuff. You have all the friends celebrating Lucy getting her best-selling book Reborn and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Bunch of ship teasers, and the team Natsu heading off to the 100-year quest, implying that there's more adventures for them to continue. If leaving a sort of doorway for Hiro to come and do more if he wants to, which turns out he ended up doing like a year later or something, I believe.
No, it was about, I want to say, a month after Eden's Year. Let me double check on 100-year quest, because I do want to show that.
But yeah, so yeah, and I guess you got a little cameo of a fairy at the end to answer the question: do fairies have tails?
Oh yeah, with Zira, yeah.
So,
yeah, it was a month ago, by the way. I want to address that. So, 100 Year Quest started 1 month after Eden Zero did.
So yeah, so it's like Fairy Tail was back before we could miss it, but I don't know. But heck, and again, I guess who knows? Let's see. Given how nostalgia tends to, again how people get nostalgic for shows, and then they come back years later, we all get disappointed. Perhaps maybe it was best that Fairy Tail came back as soon as possible, but who knows? But then again, I don't know.
I mean, the one upside I'd say 100 Year Quest has is that Hiro's the one who's writing the story, but in terms of the artist, it's a completely different person.
Granted, he's found someone that's very similar to his art style, so I guess props to that.
Which is why I don't think there's much I mean, I know in the beginning it was like, yeah, there are like little tiny details here and there I think some people were nitpicking at, but for the most part, I think the art was pretty spot on too.
Yeah, let's see. So I suppose it's got that one up on Boruto at least.
I mean, let's be fair. It's not like they were meant to have that art style, because turns out that we were supposed to get the original art design, but well, Kishi had other plans, so there's that.
And it's like, okay, Kishimoto, I get that you want to that you have your assistant do his own art style, but given the establishment level of the popularity of your, or at least former popularity of your franchise, you might want to play it consistent, since a spin-off is always going to be skeptical. But then again, I don't really care about Boruto. I don't mind. I wouldn't give a toss if it gets cancelled in the end. But we're not here to talk about that. But yeah. So yeah, in many ways, Fairy Tail was an open ending. Which, to be fair, given how mangas like Naruto, Bleach, and I guess Attack on Titan ended, you could argue that, let's see, by that standard, let's see, it's probably better, it's like probably maybe like a decent choice given how Naruto and Bleach ended. It kind of like, it pretty much, I think, put off people of next-gen kids and all that stuff. Kids.
Which, okay, I'm going to say this. In that respect, I'll give Hiro props, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people are like, well, we know how it'll end. It'll end in peace, and we're going to get the next-gen kids. But no, we didn't get that, and I personally, I think that's fine. Not every story has to end off with, okay... It does, like, not every story has to have a Harry Potter-esque type of ending where you flash forward into the future and everybody has kids. I don't think that's necessary. What's your take on that, Blue? Do you think it's necessary for every story to have a Harry Potter, Dragon Ball-esque type of ending where you flash forward years into the future and everybody's got kids and whatnot?
It depends on the story. I mean, I could definitely have seen that working for Naruto if it was done properly. If, like my quote, done properly, which it wasn't. So, Bleach, I don't know. I was expecting more of a bittersweet ending with Ichigo becoming the new Soul King and staying away from the human realm and all that stuff. But that was just me. But Attack on Titan, let's see, I expected a bittersweet ending, though it ended up being a different kind of bittersweet, depending on who you're asking the fan base.
Yeah. Guys, if you want to know why there's been a lack of content on my end of things, AOT, but I went through my phase with AOT, and that's not a boat I want to jump back into, at least not this soon.
One Piece, I expect, I don't know, and it's very similar to the first chapter in which Luffy gives the straw hat to, I don't know, some kid. Don't
you think that'd be a little predictable, though?
Possibly, but who knows? That might, let's see, but...
What if it ends with Luffy's execution?
I guess it really depends on how I do it. Or it could end similar to the one shot of seeing an older Luffy with his fully fledged pirate crew going on the next adventure. But that's honestly what I'm expecting.
Let's make this funny. he finds the One Piece. It's a giant golden toilet, and he says, "Guys, I'm sorry, I gotta take a dump." That's how you end off.
Anyway, the point being is, I don't expect we expect to see Luffy's son or daughter or anything like that in the epilogue for One Piece.
Careful, Blue. Careful when you say that, because that could very well happen.
Let's see.
Although, and see, that's the thing. Because of how popular One Piece is, I can't exactly say that's unforeseeable, because I think there's a possibility that you could get that, but you know.
But anyway, the point being, so Fairy Tail opted not to do it. Though granted, 100-Year Quest might end up doing the family and kids thing.
I wouldn't have much against that, but you know.
I mean, granted, they've already teased Atsu and Lucy's daughter, and Gray and Juvia's with the return of Elseworld, so there's that. So yeah, I'd say it's decent, though. Like you said, everything before it leaves a bit of a bitter taste in the mouth.
Yeah, like I'd argue if the last half of the Alvarez arc was at the same consistency as the first half of that arc, I think it would have been a lot better, but it's just, again, everything leading up to that ending. It's like,
but yeah, it's a tolerable ending to a rather bad arc, which is much better than what you could say for Bleach and Naruto. But
well, see, I'd say this. If you look at the story, and like if you were to read like a summary and then read like the basic bullet points, it's like, okay, the arc itself isn't actually that bad. In fact, I'd argue it's a good arc, but it falters on execution.
Well,
that's what I would say. But
But anyway, Rave Master is more of a Full Metal Alchemist style type of ending, where
it does feel like
everything, for at least the main points you have tied together. I mean, there might be a few characters that were left with their fates left unknown, such as that Deep Snow and the Jigglebutt gang. Let's see. No, granted, I guess.
Although the Jigglebutt gang's more of a
filler,
so it's not. I wouldn't say they're too relevant, but you know.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. They're more of like, let's see. They usually just appear in a chapter or two when a hero needs to do some sort of filler content, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And see, that's probably the only few things I could say about Rave Master. It does have one or two filler chapters that you could probably entirely skip. But yeah, you wouldn't miss much in the overall story, but yeah. But anyway, so yeah, in many ways, Rave Master pretty much is a bit of a nice story. Granted, the only thing that is really an issue for me is the fact that some of the characters that looked like they died came back. I mean, that sort of negates it a little bit, so it's why I probably say Full Metal Alchemist is the more better of the finale type of endings between the two, because it doesn't like bring any characters back except maybe just Owl's like original body.
I mean, I could see that. Though I'll say this: at the very least, there's at least a solid explanation behind.
Yeah, I don't know.
How they came back. I'd at least give Rave Master that. I was like, okay, yeah, it kind of negates it a bit, but at least there's a reason as to why they're back. That's not.
Yeah, I suppose
they came back for the sake of coming back. You know.
Yeah, I guess it is a much better explanation than what most manga do when they bring back characters to life. Some don't even bother explaining.
I mean, look, if I had to, I was gonna say this. If I had to pick between how the final arc of Rave Master handled bringing characters back versus the final arc of Fairy Tail, where character dies and then a chapter 2 later they come back and like, see, I think I'd take the Rave Master approach.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'd say Rave Master is definitely one of those endings where pretty much everything gets concluded, and let's see, Haru and Eri reuniting, officially becoming a couple, and even the final page being their wedding and all that stuff with every one of their friends there. So showing that everyone's together again, at least even just for this brief moment of celebration and kind of thing. We don't really see. For the most part, you only get an idea of where most of the main characters are in the currently setting. I mean, Ellie probably finished high school. Mucus is probably back leading his own gang or something in the car. Pyro's leading Ruby's in charge of a casino with Julia working there, with Jet coming to visit now and then after some training, and all that stuff. So it seems like everyone has returned to their lives or refilled their lives with some new purpose. So you got that for the main cast of Rave Master characters, and then of course and you see you have Hiro reuniting with his sister at last, and introducing them to Ellie. It's which is kind of nice actually. But yeah. So and as for Kira, you were saying,
I was just gonna say that when it came to the ending. I do like how it ties back to the beginning where you start off Rave Master at Garage Island and then you bring the story back at that spot. I thought that was actually kind of nice.
Pretty much a hero returning home after the hero's journey, pretty much. I guess you could say it's similar to Luke Skywalker returning to Tatooine, though not though the beginning of Return of the Jedi rather than the end, but heck. But anyway, let's see now. So yeah, and as for Hiro and Ellie's kids, due to the fact that Hiro Mashima, with those pages on the volumes, teasing this random kid that knew Nakamaja and all that stuff. Sort of, which I think for the first 16 or so volumes hinted that it was Hiro and Ellie's kid, until it kind of did unfortunately spoil, which I still wish they did a shillerette of that, but. Heck.
I did maybe show it you could have the parents there, but hide their face and just I don't know, maybe show their mouths or something. That was
Yeah, so it's that part could have gone without spoiler because that's kind of spoiling the ending, even though I think it might have been a bit obvious in some regards. But yeah. But yeah, in many ways, I think it's actually a bit clever of Hiro to do this, as I don't think I've seen any other mangaka do this, but who knows? Other mangakas could consider it, but from what I can tell, no one has done it since, not even Hiro Mashima himself.
Yeah.
So it seems like its own unique thing with Rave Master, at the very least. But it does allow you to see the Rave Master. It does allow you to see what kind of kid Hiro and Ellie would have. Well, granted, let's see, and you get to, and even some of the other islanders, families and all that stuff. But yeah, granted, it's mostly just for comedy gags or just about how bizarre this Nakajima character is for Rave Master, or even in the world of Rave Master. So yeah, and let's see. Granted, whether or not Rave Master will ever get a spin-off, well. Technically, it does.
Here's my thing. I know that'd be interesting and all, but I don't really think it's needed.
But but it's the story's pretty much done, pretty much.
And it's perfect. I think the ending's perfect. Yeah, I mean, if you want to have it to where you have a spin-off story, but it's focused on Levin and his side stories in Garage Island, that'd be fine.
Yeah, it probably at best the only thing you could probably do with Rave Master afterwards is maybe a mini series of slice of life manga. Let's see, just Levin's journey and it's just Levin just hanging on the island and maybe going off some places now and then to visit old friends and loved ones of their parents. See just what the world of Rave Master has been since peace has been restored and demon cards been destroyed and all that stuff.
Yeah, the Dark Ring's gone. The Rave. Yeah, I think the Raves are too. Yeah.
So stuff like that. That's probably what you could do if you ever want to do a spin-off of Rave Master. But yeah, but as I said, due to the fact that the finality of Rave Master and pretty much one of the most satisfying manga endings you could probably get. Compared to some of the ones that have come out in recent times, though, who knows? That might be for the problems of why that is will be left to explain. Probably a debate for another podcast, I guess. But yeah, I suppose for probably about the 8th or 9th win for Rave Master now, and 2 draws. Granted,
I'm sure if Sparta were here, maybe this could be a bit easier, but.
Well, that's because I gave the win to the main antagonist, but you just had to give it to Rave Master just at the slight end.
Okay, I said slight. There was a slight edge. I gave it to Rave. Otherwise, I would have been like, on one hand, yeah, there's that, but on the other hand, there's this. So that's the scenario I found myself in.
Oh well, if we ever do a Why Rave Masters good podcast, we'll probably have to have 4Life say what he would have picked for each of these categories.
That is true. Probably would.
Let's see, but anyway. Anyway, so yeah, Rave Master the win in this one. What's the next topic?
The next topic is actually this is where now we get into the questions. So the first question is which was the better series, and I think it's actually pretty obvious which of the two is.
Given the fact how Rave Master has pretty much won nearly every single round, and the only losses it had were ties, I definitely say Rave Master.
Yeah, Rave Master definitely gets it in that category. So Rave Master obviously is the better series. Now the second one I'd say is super, super subjective because that depends on person to person when I bring this up. But which series has the better art? Now I'll say this: for the time Rave Master came out and up until I want to say 2006 is when it ended, or 2005 actually. I think the art style actually is pretty good. Now you could say the early art style in the beginning was like Hiro at his when he was like still working things out on how to draw and whatnot. But even as early as Volume 1, I actually thought, the art I think stands out in its own unique way. And I think it's interesting because like as Rave progresses, you see how sharper his art style gets, like the further and further you progress into the story, even up to like the final battle with Lucia. But I don't know. Like it's not like Fairy Tail doesn't have better art, like because it does have really good art. I think for me, up until Tartarus, I say you see the art evolving, and then after Tartarus, I feel like the art kind of went down in quality for me when it came to Fairy Tail. But the best thing I guess I could say for this is that it's a subjective thing when it comes to the art style. So, what about you? What's your take on it?
I'd say probably since I got into Fairy Tail first, I probably prefer the art style. Let's see, in the mid section where you had like the Elseworld arc, where they met their doppelgangers, Tenero Island, Grand Magic Games, and some of the arcs before it, such as the Arashon 6, let's see, Luxus, the Luxus Thunder Tribe arc, Fairy Tail Civil War 1, but yeah, I definitely say that's probably for me, let's see, Hiro's artwork at his best, and granted, I do like, let's see, the artwork at Rave Master at its best towards the third as well, but I think, for me personally, I think Fairy Tail has the better artwork, and I do think some of the art designs are probably much better for, let's see, Fairy Tail than they are Rave Master. Whereas this, I think it was granted, it might just be because I'm more of a fantasy person, and I think Fairy Tail's got a more, let's see, fitting fantasy modern world setting compared to, I suppose, Rave Master, which is, I suppose, a bit fantasy, but I guess a bit of adventure.
It's kind of like a fantasy adventure. That's how I describe Rave Master.
Yeah, but I'd say probably Fairy Tail gets the win for this one for me in the art, which is another tie.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I didn't exactly give a clear winner in this one, so I was like, it depends. So, for lack of better words, let's just say it's another draw.
Oh, okay. In that case, I could have given Fairy Tail a win there. Oh well.
So,
Fairy Tail.
What's up?
Oh no, nothing. I was just saying a poor Fairy Tail.
Yeah. Which now brings us over to the next question, and that is: has the mangaka / writer improved? And something I want to bring up. is the third volume afterwards of Eden Zero, because it's actually kind of interesting, and this is something I've known about even before Hiro talked about it. But he mentions how in Rave Master that he actually worked out the entire series after he finished up the first half of the story. So relatively up until he got to King, he was like, okay, so he knew exactly where the story of Rave was going to go. But when it came to Fairy Tail, it was the complete opposite. It was a story that he kind of worked on week to week and had little to no idea how the story was going to go. And I think it's interesting because when you bring Eden Zero into account, it's kind of in the middle, because he knows the plot point of where Eden Zero is going to go, but it's just connecting those dots is the thing he has to work towards. And it's an interesting take, but if we were to look at this from Fairy Tail, or not Fairy Tail, but if we were to look at this from Rave Master to Fairy Tail, I'd say it's a massive, I can't say massive decline, but it's definitely a decline itself, because if you go from Rave to Fairy Tail, it's like, whoa, Hiro, what happened? But
I'd say for the... What's it go on?
I was going to say this, but because we have Eden Zero now, and it looking like it's retracing like some of those old Rave Master elements that Hiro used to do, and of course with how he's written Under Your Quest so far, I'd say Fairy Tail was a slump, and now with Eden Zero, and you could argue Under Your Quest, he's kind of bringing himself back up. It's not all the way back up there like it was with Rave Master, but it's a work in progress. That's the best way I would describe it. But what's your take, Blue? I mean, I think I'd say yours is probably going to be the more interesting one, since when it came to Hiro, you got into his work through Fairy Tail, and then you read Rave Master. So, what's your view on it?
Let's see now. I'd say for like the first 250 chapters of Fairy Tail-ish, I think you'd probably say for the most part, I'd say his quality of writing, was very similar to Rave Master. Maybe not as grand or stuff, but I'd say at least pretty decent, and nothing that's by the book offensive. And granted, yeah, there's probably like stuff he made up, but I think he at least, for the most part, had better explanations. Though granted, I think by the time of the Grand Medic games, he started doing the more cheap ways of how the characters win their fights and stuff, and it just got more problematic as time went on, to finally you got the final arc, and it just ended up pissing everyone off of what he did, or at least how he took down characters like Zerf and Agnologia and the Springburn 12. So I'd say at least into like, I suppose maybe the time skip of the Grand Magic games, I'd say Hiro's writing was probably consistently good or decent, but then it took a nosedive and had its ups and downs since. Now granted, to be fair, yes, okay, Hiro clearly was not really planning out Fairy Tail. I mean, I don't think he even intended it to be this long, since it was like supposed to be like 10 volumes, I think, originally, but it became so damn popular, it just kept going. So, yeah, but I will say, despite the fact that I will say Hiro does have some good ways of tying up loose ends and stuff, or at least tying up, like, retcons and all that stuff, or at least things that don't, like, okay, or at least plot threads that you're wondering that don't feel like they connect with which he did with, like, all the stuff that Zerf did throughout that Zerf had influenced or affected throughout the things such as the demons, the Tower of Heaven, Epherion, the Gate of Eclipse. You learn that all those were dirty attempts of either trying to resurrect his brother or trying to kill him later on with his personality and that stuff. So all that, I think, nicely well done. It's kind of like how Kishimoto sort of retconned the origins of the tailed beasts and stuff, but was able to tie it nicely together until maybe towards the end and start breaking some of the rules a bit. But yeah, particularly like Killer Bee surviving an extraction and some of the stuff with Naruto and the Nine Tails. But we're not here to talk about the plot threads of Naruto. But yeah, so yeah, I'd definitely say, let's see, he remained consistent for a while, but then took a nosedive. And for the most part, he seems to recover a bit, though still has some of the problematic aspects of writing Fairy Tail in both 100 Year Quest and Eden Zero with some of the fan service. No, it's not as bad, but yeah, I definitely say, let's see, many of the probably aspects that people get annoyed with Hiro Mashima's writing is also in Rave Master, but it's done in a way that I don't think kind of offends you or makes you cringe. So
yeah, like no, I totally agree because like yeah, like you've got certain panels where you have like Ellie in a swimsuit, but it's not like there's like a huge emphasis on it. Like she'll just be in a swimsuit. It's like okay, fine, she's in a swimsuit.
I will admit, see, one thing I forgot to mention about the art style, I do admit that I suppose some of the art style did get a bit of a generic with like, especially when it came to the fan service. It's just like the same girls going like, wow, wow, but something like that. But yeah, I definitely say, let's see, Hiro Mashima. Well, I don't know if he will ever be as. I don't think he'll ever be regarded as writing a series as good as Rave Master again. I definitely say he's at least still a decent writer when he's putting the effort in. But so yeah. But who knows? Granted, Eden Zero's still not over yet, so we have to wait and see what he does.
Yeah, and based on what he said, I know he's mentioned that he wants to be around the 20 to 30 volume mark. Like I think the way he described it was like, okay, he can see it being around the length of Rave Master, maybe a little longer, but definitely not as long as Fairy Tail was. So,
well, given the fact that, let's see, we have 3 members of the Arashi on 6, let's see, Galactica, we'd probably still need at least 3 more, and Ziggy, I'd say we got quite a few more arcs to deal with.
yeah, like we're far from over when it comes to Eden Zero, but if I had to take a guess, I'd say like around like the 35, maybe even 40 volume marks where I could see Hero wrap things up with Eden Zero.
Pretty much when Naruto and Bleach were, for many people, were like around, okay, this should have ended around there, but that's a topic for another day. So yeah, next question.
Okay, so after that, we actually get into our secret questions.
Okay.
Which the first one is, when do you expect the Fairy Tail 100 Year Quest anime? And I'll say this. I know we're gearing close to chapter 100. I can't say exactly how far we are away, and I know it's bi-weekly, so we'll get it this year. It's just a matter of when this year we're going to get it. And I think once we get chapter 100, maybe we'll get the announcement of the anime. But if I had to take a guess on when we're getting it, I'd say somewhere around 2022. That's my guess.
I'd say you'd probably get, let's see, after like 100. It's Fairy Tail's gone on for more than just like a few hundred chapters, like maybe 100 to 130ish. I think, because that's when I think the Eden Zero anime announced and all that stuff. Because it's like, let's see, because it seems like, let's see, anime adaptations for Hiro Mashima tend to happen once his manga work has at least reached over 100 chapters, or that's just with most mangas in general. Because it's like, it gives them enough content to do at least 25 to 50 episodes at least. So
yeah.
Granted, due to the fact that Fairy Tail anime is a lot more seasonal now, I think they'll probably do a bit more seasonal with it. But yeah.
And I'd have nothing against that.
So yeah, it could either do. No, granted, I am curious to see. At the very least, we'd probably get the Water Dragon act of the 100 Year Quest.
If we do get seasonal anime, I could see it go up to the Wood Dragon arc. I could see it.
But yeah, who knows? Or it might just be they just do 52 episodes 1 year and then wait a year or two, maybe 3, and then do another 52 episodes next year once there's enough chapter content to do it. But I think they'll probably at the very least, wait and see what happens with the glitzy female goddess Celine Dragon arc before they announce an anime adaptation for that. So yeah. Granted, there's also the fact that Eden Zero is currently on right now, and that's probably going to be the main focus for the Fairy Tail director right now because he's doing it, right?
Yeah. If we were to get something beforehand, I could probably see a Heroes anime adaptation because again, it's only like 10 chapters, and if at most,
I think that's more likely to be either Omake special or Omake specials, really.
Yeah, I'm thinking because actually no, that it's gonna tie more into the next question. But but yeah, I definitely say we probably get something next year in terms of Fairy Tail 100 Year Quest. And if I had to take a guess as to who would adapt it, probably A1 because I know they handled Fairy Tail up to the very end. So, and I wouldn't have nothing against that because I think A1 did a pretty good job.
Well, it'll be continuing the work they did and all that stuff. Well, granted, let's see, but yeah. Rather not, depending on which studio, you'd see you rather not want them to continue the work on a particular franchise period. But anyway, go on. What's the next question?
Well, the next question is the final question, and it's: do you think Rave Master could get an anime reboot? And guys, let me be perfectly frank with you. As much as I would love to see it, I don't know if we would ever get it.
Well, let's see. Fullmetal Alchemist got like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood years later, once the manga was reaching its end, and let's see, the manga series was popular enough to like say, we want a proper anime conclusion. And heck, even this year you had, let's see, you have this new Shaman King anime, which I'm hoping to discuss eventually. Though I need to find a free date for chat to do it, so I can discuss it with you as well. So yeah, and that was 20 years after the first anime. So for all we know, let's see, Rave Master could get another anime season. Though granted, it's a new anime reboot thing. Though granted, its art style and animation style will probably be more similar to Hiro's modern day work, and especially what he's done with the Heroes manga. But yeah, but if manga gets,
I have nothing against that. I think their design in Heroes is pretty good. Again, I think there's something unique about their art style in Rave Master. But if that's what we get for a potential Rave Master anime reboot, hey, I'd be fine with it.
But yeah, I could definitely see that. But granted, I think it'll probably be more guaranteed if they do a Heroes, if they do a sort of like Heroes
anime.
Let's see, yeah, I'll make kind of thing. If that's like, let's see, because now I think you'd probably get people interested in like Rave Master again and all that stuff. But yeah,
because I mean, I know they did have a Rave and Fairy Tail crossover, but that was like super brief.
But yeah, I figured we're probably gonna get at least a few seasons of Eden Zero first before we could get like another, let's see, reboot of Rave Master. But who knows? I could potentially see it happening, especially if, let's see, if Eden Zero proves popular enough to get like the Omeg, and if 100 Year Quest comes and it's like, oh, wait, there's another work of Hiro Mashima that we can probably get Fairy Tail fans to take a look at.
I can see it.
So yeah, but honestly, it'd probably be a while. Rave Master came out in 2005, right? The anime?
No, 2005 is when. Oh, you're talking about the anime. Let me check. Rave Master, as far as the anime goes, let's double check. The anime came out in 2001, so although, that's interesting because October 13th, 2001. So, I mean, if you want to do a special 20-year anniversary, you could surprise me, but I don't know.
Well, who knows? They might have considered it, but I think COVID might have blew those chances. But for you might get a 25th anniversary idea.
True.
So yeah, I don't know. I'd say probably at least if you think they're going to do an anime for an anniversary, check out maybe wait and see if they do it for the 25th.
Yeah, or the 30-year anniversary, which.
Because let's see, because most series like to do special things on their anniversary if they're ongoing and all that stuff. But other than that, I'd say not right now.
Yeah,
Because Eden Zero's just started as an anime.
yeah, that's my thing too. Is like I don't, because of where Eden Zero's at right now, especially with the anime. I don't think we'd give Rave so soon. Now here's the thing: unless they want to do something ballsy and have it to where, okay, you have the Eden Zero anime, you have the 100 Quest anime, and you have the anime reboot for Rave, which, again, ballsy move. I don't think they go that direction, but who knows? Stranger things have happened in recent years, so I mean, did anybody really expect us to get a Shaman King anime reboot after so long?
No, I mean, no, I did not. Let's see. And it makes me hope that there are other certain reboots that are possible in the future, but we're not going to get into those here.
There's especially one in particular, but because if anybody knows which series I'm talking about, then I'll start believing in the other possibility. But
but yeah, so yeah, let's see. So yeah, many animes are starting to start getting their reboots and sequels. Let's see whether or not Rave Master will be the same. Who knows?
Which let me add this: if that reboot ever comes to pass for Rave Master, can we please get Yuri Lowenthal to voice Haru again, because he actually wasn't that bad.
Is that the voice of Sasuke Chia in the English dub?
Also, Ben 10.
Oh yeah. Well, Ben 10 and Alien Force to Omniverse. Oh, and PS4 Spider-Man.
And that, and I know Ruki's English dub voice also voiced Ellie, which
Okay,
I could probably see that again. It's been a while, so.
Granted, I'm wondering, are they going to do the original English dub opening again for it if they did a Rave Master reboot, or they just stick to the Japanese openings since they're
would. That's the thing. I'd be a little curious as to how they handle the openings there, because I mean, for the Rave Master anime opening, it wasn't bad, but I think it could have been better.
Fair enough. When I tried to look for the Rave Master anime, I could only find the English dub, none of the Japanese.
Well, that's interesting.
So yeah, the Japanese sub is pretty rare. Heck, seeing the Japanese opening is pretty rare, even on YouTube.
That's saying something. Because normally Japanese openings aren't the most difficult thing to find. Especially in this day and age, so. Yeah, but honestly, guys, I think we're just kind of rambling on at this point.
So. Let's see. It's with Rave Master being the clear victor, which I think was pretty obvious, but heck.
And if anything, my mission's finally complete. I got Blue to find Rave Master.
Yes, and now you've got to get me to read these two next manga. There's in the next 4 weeks, which I have yet to do, but who knows? But yeah. But from what I can tell from like For Life and Lucky Cheese reaction to these, this seems to be like I'll end up being the tiebreaker.
To announce the series we're going to do next, because if anybody needs a refresher course, normally when we come to an end of a Manga Wars episode, we announce, or at the very least, I announce the next Manga Wars episode's going to be. And yes, it will in fact be an episode after a long time. So, the next Manga Wars episode is going to be Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba versus The Promise Neverland.
Dun dun dun.
You know what they say, never say never. Which is going to be a pretty interesting matchup. Not going to lie. Well, I'm hoping it's definitely. I hope it's definitely one that we get Sparta back on board, because
He's quite the Demon Slayer fanboy.
I mean, look, I love Demon Slayer too, and I love Promised Neverland almost equally, but it's gonna be interesting. Not gonna lie. Fun fact: I actually got to do a bit of rereading myself just to prep up for it. So, I got some homework to do.
Let's see. It'll probably take me a few days, but I'm pretty certain after Thursday, I'll be probably reading the mangas non-stop. Maybe even if I get enough time, watch the animes, and maybe even the movie, just because of how it's a popular Demon Slayer's movie is, from what I can tell. Third or fourth highest grossing film of, 2020, but that's mostly because of COVID, but still, that's pretty impressive.
That is. It honestly is really impressive. But, with that being said, you guys, that is pretty much all we've got for this Manga Wars special. Blue, it was really great having you on board for another Manga Wars episode, or in this case, a Manga Wars special, even in particular because, it's been more of a Hiro Mashima stream, going from, recollecting on Rave Master and then looking at Fairy Tail and how the differences are, with his art style, writing, characterization, etc., etc.
Problem, anytime.
And aside from that, guys, that's pretty much it. I'm LuckyRave.
I'm BlueStarSaber.
And we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.